It's like TV.
We need somebody with a clapper.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Perrysburg Board of Education meeting. At this time, I'd like to take a roll call, please. Mr. Hassel?
Yes, Mrs. Eubank,
Here.
Mr. Bennington,
I am here.
Mr. Pullman,
Here.
Ms. Larimer,
Here.
Mrs. Downs.
Here.
Now, could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Perrysburg Schools welcomes you tonight to the meeting. And for those that are online, thank you for being with us. We care about the safety of our students, our staff, families, and guests. Please note that there are exits behind you and behind us here. And also there is an AED located right outside these doors. We're located at 140 East Indiana Avenue. And again, we thank you for joining us tonight. At this time, Board, we'd like to have a motion to adopt the proposed agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Did we get copies of the agenda tonight?
I don't have.
I didn't bring my computer. Okay, never mind.
Did you second it?
I do have.
I
I
moved
second.
And he seconded.
Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Hostler.
Yes, Mrs. Downs.
Here. Didn't we say this before? Oh,
This
that
is
was
the adoption, yeah. So,
Here.
Thank you.
No, yes.
Miss
voted. Yes.
Larimer. Ms. Larimer.
Sure, why not?
All right. Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
All righty. Mr. Bennington.
Yes.
Ms. Eubanks.
Yes.
Okay, at this time we'll have board recognitions. Mr. Hostler?
All right, thank you. First is we're very pleased to be recognizing our Shining Star recipient. As you know, that is a recognition of a staff member that is made possible through recommendations from their peers and from families and parents. So we're very fortunate to have an HPI staff member, this recipient. And at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Best to come up and say a few words. And as he makes his way, we just wanted to say, I know he'll be speaking about Mrs. Christine Harper, who is somebody that is very well deserving of this. And certainly we're very excited that she could be here today and just a great, a great moment. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Best at this time.
Well, thank you. It is an honor to introduce my good friend and colleague, Chris Harper, as the Perrysburg Schools Shining Star Award recipient tonight. As a school counselor at Fort Meigs and Hall Prairie Intermediate School, Chris has touched the countless lives in ways that are difficult to quantify. On any given day, you can find Chris greeting students as they enter the building, meeting with individuals, students, and staff members throughout the day, coordinating and conducting lunch and support groups, pushing into classrooms, and coordinating services with outside agencies. A lot of times she'll just take the time to walk around and check in with students. So here's what Chris's colleagues submitted during the nomination process. Chris dedicates so much love, time, and energy to our students every single day. Students have reported that with Mrs. Harper is talking to them, they feel like they are the most important person in the world because she makes them feel that way. And it's so true. Chris really does make you feel that way. She has such a phenomenally caring heart. Chris is a fierce advocate for our students, their families, and our staff. Chris attends our team meetings whenever she can to make sure we are updated on our students' special circumstances or social emotional learning needs. She works with teachers to ensure all students feel safe, comfortable, and happy in our classrooms and in our school. Chris organizes and runs many different student groups, such as grief groups, new student groups, coping skills, managing stress, and many more. Chris often eats lunch with our students and invites them to bring a friend if they just need to chat. She is always looking for ways to support the social and emotional health of our students and those around her. Chris has quite literally given students the clothes off her back before, giving a student her coat if they did not have one, and organizing clothes donations, meal donations, and even a bicycle donation. This year, we were heartbroken to hear that one of our former students' fathers passed away. Chris got a card for the student and asked for all of us to sign it. This is one of the many cards Chris has organized and sent out to our students and their families over the past few years. Once last year, a student was struggling to feel appreciated in my classroom, so Chris invited both the student and me to play a game of Uno. This helped the student see that he was loved and appreciated and offered a wonderful connection opportunity for us. This is simply one of the literal thousands of examples of small things that Chris does to make a huge impact on our students and their well-being. She is absolutely always there for our students. She sits with them, talks with them, and works with them to teach them the important coping skills needed during these difficult times. In my submission, Chris Harper should be considered for sainthood for having to put up with me for the past 13 years. So again, it's my honor to introduce Chris Harper as the Shining Star recipient.
Would you like to say a few words? Because you're the kind of person that I've been in lots of meetings with you over the years, and she's the person that, when there's a discussion going on, everyone's discussing, but when you have something to say, it's like the room kind of quiets down because whatever's going to be said is of great importance.
Well, it's a little. I just have to say that I'm honored with this, but I am only one piece of the puzzle. And there's so many people that make that puzzle work for our families and our kids. And I just appreciate being able to have that one piece as we all work together to benefit our kids and our families. So thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you.
And we're very grateful to the Griffune Agency, which provides us the ability to present this award. So we're very grateful for their support in doing this. So if it's okay, I'd like to move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is the fall sports state qualifiers. And I'd like to invite Mr. Chuck Jaco up to the podium to recognize the fall athletes. I think the over-under on whether or not we would have a fall season was in question, and it's quite an accomplishment just to be at this point where we're recognizing what took place this fall. So it's several different types of victories with this presentation.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hostler. Exactly. Back in August, to think that we'd have the opportunity to have this recognition ceremony tonight is impressive, and to know what we had to go through as a coaching staff and our student athletes and the athletic department to get to this point today is commendable. But we wouldn't be here today without the support of central office and the school board, and thank you for giving these kids an opportunity to be recognized and have the season that they had. I also want to make sure everybody understands the amount of time that was put into by the coaching staff and student athletes to follow all the orders, whether it was from the governor, the Ohio Department of Health, the OHSAA, the Wood County Health Department, and our local guidelines. I feel we truly made athletics as safe as possible for our student athletes this fall. And even though every day presented its own unique set of challenges, I'm grateful to these coaches, student athletes, and trainers, and I'm glad that we're able to celebrate some successes here. I feel like every time I come to the board meeting, I want to preface by saying the amount of time and the challenge it takes to get to the Division I state championships in the state of Ohio. When you consider the amount of competition that they face from the school districts out of not just Toledo, but Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, to be able to compete at the state level, we never, in our athletic department, take that for granted. It feels like it's just what we do, right? Teams get recognized every single season, multiple teams and athletes. That's not the norm. There are many school districts in our league in Northwest Ohio and across the state that probably have these every couple years. And we're here every season, and we're proud of that. And it's because of the amount of time that our student athletes and the support of our parents, the community, the school board, and our coaches put in. So again, ecstatic to be here. We're going to start with our first coach. I'm not quite sure who's on the first slide. I think it's girls golf. I'm going to introduce Coach Rick Reddig to introduce his athlete.
Before I begin, I think I can speak for all of the coaches and thank Mr. Jaco, Mr. Henline, Veronica Guillen, all the work that the athletic department has done behind the scenes, late at night, on the weekends, to make sure that we had a fall sports season. As a coach, their guidance was nonstop. Anytime you needed something, all you needed to do was text, and you were going to get an answer within 10 to 15 minutes. So I just, on behalf of the coaches, wanted to thank the athletic department for all of their countless and tireless work in making sure that we had a season this year. That's really commendable, and as coaches, we appreciate that. And had we not had a season, I would have not had the opportunity to coach the best golfer ever on the female side at Perrysburg. Her name's Sydney Deal. She's a remarkable young lady, not just in her golfing skills, but in who she is as a person. Immediately when we began starting the program this year, her first response was, when could I have the team over and we can work in my basement, because she has a swing simulator in her basement. And I said, that might not be a great idea this year. But she was automatically the person to step up and take on a leadership role as a freshman on a team full of seniors. We had a freshman, 4 seniors, and then another freshman on the starting 6 this year. And she played the 1 spot right off the bat. Great story about Sydney. When we had our first round of tryouts at White Pines, she shot a score of 34. 36 is par. And I told Sydney, it's great that you just broke the school record, but you actually have to do it in a match first. And her first match, 9-hole match at White Pines, was against Bowling Green, and she shot a 32. And I said, okay, point well taken, good job. And she's so humble that when she was interviewed about her record-breaking round, she said, oh, coach told me I shot a 32, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. She's just that kind of a young lady. She's impossible to not like. And her game pales in comparison, as I said, to the person that she is. Here's some of the things that she accomplished this year. She was first team All-League. She won the medalist at the Northern Lakes League tournament, and she was named Player of the Year. She was first team All-District, and she was also named by the District Coaches Association as the Division I District Player of the Year. She was the sectional medalist. She was the district medalist, shooting an even par 72 at Stone Ridge, a very challenging course. The next closest golfers, 2 seniors tied for second at 75, and then it went down the hill from there. The closest freshman to her at that tournament was a 101. And again, she shot an even par 72. We traveled down to the Gray course, and she shot a 77 on the first day and an 80 at the Ohio State course. She tied for 20th at the Ohio State course out of 72 of the best golfers in the state of Ohio. Again, this is a freshman I'm talking about. She broke the school record with a low 9-hole round of 32, and she holds the school season average record with an even par 36. She is an accomplished golfer, and she's just getting started. And selfishly, I know that I am the envy of every golf coach in the state of Ohio on the girls' side, because I get to hang around Sydney Deal for the next 3 years. So it's very easy to talk about this young lady, and we're all very proud of her accomplishments and look for great things to come. So thank you.
Next up, we have Coach Charles Burgode with girls tennis.
Thank you, Mr. Jaco, Athletic Department, and Board of Education. You're going to hear a lot of similar things as Coach Reddick just said. Fast forward a few years. Sydney O'Nest had a very decorated career at Perrysburg High School. 4 times she qualified for the state tournament. So those of you who have been to these board meetings before, you recognize her name. What's most impressive is she got there 2 times as a singles player. And this year she was able to advance past the first round. She finished in the top 8 players in Division I, which is pretty impressive. That earned her 2nd team All-State, in addition to her 1st team All-League and 1st team All-District. Oh, and by the way, she lost to the eventual state champion. So needless to say, Sydney's a pretty good tennis player. She could make every shot. She works hard to make sure that she can hit every shot. Her performance is a result of all the hard work that she puts in. But when she gets on the court and she's playing an opponent, she's very flexible. She can change her game to whatever she needs to for that specific opponent. She plays to her strengths. She attacks her opponent's weaknesses. A lot of us who maybe aren't as familiar with tennis, haven't picked up a racket maybe, you don't realize, like golf, tennis is very much in the head, okay? Sydney is one of the most mentally resilient people that I know. Okay, that's not tennis players, that's just people in general, of all age. Imagine having no self-doubt when you're under immense pressure. That's Sydney O'Nest. But I also want to draw some parallels to the other Sydney that we talked about today. Sydney off the court should be celebrated just as much as Sydney on the court. When you think of what a portrait of a Yellow Jacket is, you're thinking of Sydney O'Nest. Tennis does not define Sydney. Hard work leading to success defines Sydney. So I just want to say thank you one more time for the opportunity to recognize her today. And I want to say thank you to Sydney for your leadership, your humility, and your wit. We'll be missing that next year.
I'm going to speak on behalf of Coach Keith Medeiros. He could not attend tonight's session. He did provide a summary. Due to the large size of our team, 69 boys, and the race limits imposed due to the coronavirus, we need to juggle our schedule quite a bit this year. Our primary training facility also changed due to the team size. However, the boys did an awesome job responding to all the changes and keeping a positive attitude. I was very proud of their work ethic and impressed that they followed the guidelines set for them by the high school, the OHSA, and the Wood County Health Department. In a nutshell, both the varsity and JV won all but one of their regular season meets. They finished second in the league and district championships. They won the regional championship for the first time in school history. And they placed 17th at the OHSA state championship. This year marked the team's 5th consecutive season qualifying for the state championships. Mark Barancini established a new school record of 15 minutes and 30 seconds and placed 6th place at the state championship, the highest ever placed by a boy in school history. Mark was also invited to compete on the Ohio team at the Mid-East Cross Country Championships, which is a competition between Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. Although the race was canceled due to the coronavirus, it marked the 3rd consecutive year that a Perrysburg student athlete has been invited to compete on Ohio's All-Star team. We had 5 boys from this year's team earn academic All-Ohio honors. Most important to the guys on the team, they were able to complete their season. Coach Medeiros would like to thank the school board and Mr. Hostler for their continued support this season. If you want to go back real quick to the boys slide. So we had Brendan Redmond, Austin Schultz, Nathan Wiley, Ben Keller, Kiefer Dorr, Sam Gillen, Mark Bancini, and Andrew Beeks were the members of this year's OHSA state qualifying boys cross country team. At this time, I'd like to introduce Coach John Mannheim for the girls cross country program.
Thank you, Mr. Jaco. As the other coaches have mentioned, I really want to thank the board and Superintendent Hostler for giving us the opportunity to compete this year. After the first few weeks, I was extremely tired of saying, stay away from each other, put your mask on, don't share water bottles, no, we can't have team dinners. But that soon dissipated because after we had our first few meets and I could see the joy and just the fun and the positive vibes that the girls were getting from just being able to compete made all those little things so worth the fact that they got to run a full season and make memories that they would never have had the opportunity to do had they not had your blessing and allowed us to compete this year. So thank you very, very much. I also want to thank Mr. Jaco, the amount of emails and coronavirus questions and meet changes, and we need to go to this meet, we need to go to 2 meets this weekend, we need 4 buses. It was just constant communication that he was willing to do and make happen. So thank you, Mr. Jaco. The success of our team, we were the league champions, district champions, regional champions, and we finished 7th at the state meet, which we finished higher a couple years. A couple years ago, we finished 5th, but I would say this was the greatest team achievement in school history because we weren't ranked that high. We had never cracked the top 10 in the state rankings, and then the day of the state meet, this group of very young girls, there's only 2 seniors out of that group, just ran an incredible race. At one point, we were in 5th place. They score the meet. The technology is so incredible now that they wear chips on their shoes, computer chips, and as they pass certain points on the course, the meet gets scored. And at one point, at the 2-mile mark, we were in 5th or 6th place and moving forward, ultimately to finish 7th. But it was an incredible accomplishment by a very, very young group of girls. It's the largest team in Northwest Ohio. It's not even close. When we show up to meets and get off the 2 buses, people look at us like, did you leave anyone in Perrysburg? 54 girls is a very, very large team. I want to say the next largest team in this area is Notre Dame, and they've got 28 or 29 girls. So it's a big group of girls that has achieved a lot. The girls that you see in that picture all were the 8 girls that attended the state meet and achieved great things. And I just want to mention freshman Anna Dalton, freshman Sydney Dottelin, sophomore Anna Sophia Gower, sophomore Sophie Smith, sophomore Brooke Dottelin, senior Olivia Fennekin. And then I especially want to mention 2 individuals that both finished as all-state runners. Last year, I should say 2 years ago, we had our first ever all-state runner, Aubrey Duhame. And she actually was all-state again this year. She finished 14th overall. She's the only girl in the history of our program that was ever all-state, and we've had some really good teams, so that shows you how tough it is to be an all-state runner. But this year we had a second girl join Aubrey as an all-state runner, and that was Maddie Wagner. And Maddie's a senior, and amazingly enough, she only ran 2 years, and last year she was hurt after the first or second meet and essentially didn't even have a season. So in pretty much her first season of running, she was an all-state runner. And she'll be taking her talents next year to Bowling Green to go to school and run there. So Aubrey Duhame, a second-time all-state performer, and Maddie Wagner, her first time in her truly her only season, were incredible performances. So with that being said, we're young. You'll see me again next year. And hopefully they'll be here with me. It's a little strange. They're all at home now watching this, and I hope I gave them enough airtime. But anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So the previous athletes were part of the OHSA competition that you have to qualify in advance to earn your place as an all-state athlete or a state qualifying team. Recently, we started to honor those who were selected by their prospective media as all-state athletes, whether they're first or second team. And I just want to briefly go over, because this just came through this weekend. We do have 3 football players who earned all-state honors. Second team all-state at linebacker, Jack Higgins, had a great career for us. First team all-state, Connor Wallenczak is a sophomore. He was district offensive player of the year. We believe he's the first sophomore in the history of the football program to be first team all-state. And then Cade Zimmerly had a decorated career senior year. He was NLL Co-Player of the Year, Blade Player of the Year, First Team All-State, and did I mention he's an offensive and defensive lineman? He's only the second lineman in the history of the Toledo Blade to be selected as their Blade Player of the Year. And good news for Cade, who had initially signed with the University of Indianapolis. He got a full ride offer to Bowling Green State University. He'll be signing this Friday, and his dream of playing D1 football came true. So congrats to our football program. And then our other sport this fall with some all-state athletes were the girls soccer program. I don't know, Tom, if that slide.
I don't think it made it through.
Okay, I know. Okay, so on the girls' side, second team All-State sophomore Adele Francis, who was a first team All-League player, obviously has a phenomenal future ahead of her as only a sophomore, making second team Division I All-State. And then our first team All-State soccer player was Jessica Gast, who also was NLL Co-Player of the Year, District Player of the Year, and first team All-State. I think you heard a common theme tonight. We had multiple District Player of the Years across the board this fall. It was an amazing, successful fall. And I could go on and on about the accolades for the the all NLL senior all academic teams and how well we did and persevered throughout all the challenges that they had. My hope is that we get this opportunity from the athletic department to be here again for the winter sports. If you recall, last year, middle of March, right before the state tournament, is when all of this pretty much started and started shutting things down. And those were the athletes, the first group who really got that opportunity taken away, and obviously went into the spring. So having the fall back, I hope, prove that we can do this safely, successfully, and it's certainly my hope and desire to be here recognizing these winter sport athletes. We're starting a month into the season. We're doing things that are already off to a great start. We have many kids who probably will have the right to be here. With that being said, on behalf of all the student athletes who were recognized tonight, and not just those athletes, but every single rostered athlete on every fall team, thank you once again on behalf of them and our athletic department for affording us this opportunity. Thank you.
I can just say, Mr. Jaco, first, congratulations to the entire department, athletic department this fall, and also to all the athletes, like you say, the third teamer, the first teamer, the 12th man, 12th woman, that they follow the protocol that you and your department and the CDC and the governor has established to make this happen. And I know the board weighed in on sometimes questions, do we have fall sports, what do we do? You made it happen, and thank you for that. And the winter athletes and the spring athletes, I'm sure will do the same thing, following the procedures to make this happen, so thank you.
So that's it for recognitions at this time. The agenda does call for a break, so I'm not sure.
Well, we'll let them, surely you can leave at this point because we're going to meet some more yet tonight. You can stay, of course, too. We've got some good stuff to talk about. We will not, board, do you need a break now? We can take a break a little later if need be.
Yeah, a little later.
Okay. Thank you all for coming this evening. Again, congratulations to all of you. Thank you. And we'll go right to item number 6, Superintendent's Report. Mr. Hostler.
We had public participation, Mr. Pullman, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see anybody at, well,
Denny, you wanna
Denny, did you
talk?
want to speak?
Oh, you don't want to talk?
Okay,
All right.
sorry, Denny.
All right. At this time, I'd like to just provide a little bit of a update, COVID update, and this will take us through the remainder of this semester, and then begin to talk a little bit about what we can expect next semester as we regroup for the second part of the year. So I first wanted to begin with just kind of a, the weekly update. So this is available on our website, and it provides just information in a couple of broad categories that we've been monitoring all year. You can see the results here, and it's also available on our website. The one thing I do want to share, a couple of highlights, One is the number of students quarantined. So as you know, we do have HPI, the junior high and high school are remote at this time. And the number of students that are having to quarantine is actually increased from the previous week. And I think that gives a good indication of the amount of spread that there is in the community. So students who are quarantined are students that we get a phone call that their mom or their dad or another family member has COVID, and that student, even though they're not in school, we report that they do have to quarantine. We also have activities, whether it be concerts, performing arts, or athletics. When students are around other students or adults that are positive, they too have to quarantine. So this is something that we're seeing that increase in terms of in the community and resulting in people having to sit out. The number of employees increased by 1, so this number has been steady now for 2 weeks, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And the number of students that are positive for COVID is increased by 9. So again, another indication that there is a lot of community spread, and we have a number of our students out, that are remote right now. So if those students were in school, the number that would be above that are quarantined would be significantly higher, because anybody around those students would have to be quarantined. So just wanted to kind of break that down. The employees isolated and students isolated, because we're not able to do the full screening, right now, because we're in remote, those numbers are a little bit off from where we've been in the past. And then the numbers of individuals traced, even though not everybody is in school, the COVID team is still busy following up on information from the health department and information from families. So that work is ongoing. Next, I wanted to share on December 9th, we got the latest Wood County Health Department update report, and it shares the number of active cases in our zip code, and you can see here that in all of Wood County, Perrysburg still is leading. That's where it was the last time we met, with 141 to 145 active cases. Bowling Green, the 2 zip codes that represent Bowling Green, 111 to 115. Now, compared to a week ago, we're actually down from 171 to 175. And from November 25th, where we were at 191 and 195, we've fallen. And then, of course, just as a reference point, November 4th, the beginning of last month, we were at 66 to 70. So what does this mean? And I just want to share kind of what we learned. The numbers falling off is certainly a good sign, and we understand that because of Thanksgiving and the amount of travel that takes place, the activities that happen, there's more chance of exposure. And we saw at Thanksgiving and the weeks after the numbers increase. And now as we move away from Thanksgiving, we're starting to see those numbers fall. In speaking with the health department, they said that is somewhat typical from what they're seeing in other locations as well. So that preemptive steps that we did to have that week off remote following Thanksgiving, I think, again, the data is pointing to us, that after an event like Thanksgiving, we're going to see an increase because of people being around more people. So it's reasonable to anticipate that following Christmas and New Year's, where people will be getting together, even though everyone is talking about doing smaller celebrations, inevitably families are going to come together, friends are going to come together, and we're anticipating an increase like we saw over Thanksgiving. We hope we're wrong. We hope that there's continued decrease, and we hope when we get to January, we're talking about 60 active cases and not 160. But we do know, we do have a trend, we do understand. How the district looks for cases, as you can see here, in blue is the number of students that are positive, week 17. That was from December 4th to the 10th. We had 25 students who were positive. Staff, again, another eclipsed the highest, or it was the same level that we had 2 weeks ago, the highest at 10. And you can see that trend is continuing upward, which again is a concern for us as we look at the future. Quarantines, you see a reduction because 3 of our buildings are fully remote. And even though from week 16 into week 17 we saw an increase, it's not anywhere near where we were in week 14 when things really started to happen in our district, where we had over 483 students quarantined in 1 week. So this is a good sign, but again, what is behind that sign is the fact that we have more students that are remote than before. Where students are getting it from, again, we're continuing to monitor this, and between unknown, not knowing where they got it from, not being, and what that means is you're not around anybody who is positive. So for us, that still is the largest category. The second largest is a family member. So spread is happening through unknown sources, more than 50%, and either someone you don't know where you got it, or somebody that's your family. Those are the 2 largest areas, as you can see here, followed by during the school day, we've had 4 confirmed, 21 presumptive, and then of course athletics. Despite the great job that they've done, there's just more ability for people to get together. You heard the coaches talking about that today. Out of sport, out of travel leagues, and of course out of other out of school contacts remain an area where people are getting it. So all different places COVID is found. Looking at the high school, you can see that week 14 was kind of a big week, and we've seen that decrease, but in terms of the number of students that are positive, you know, we're at the 3rd highest, you know, week in terms of the number of students that are positive. So even if students are remote, there's still a lot of spread that's taking place. The number of students that are quarantined obviously is significantly down, and also the number of staff members that are positive. When we were in the middle of, you know, the weeks of, you know, those middle weeks, we saw staff starting to get it compared to earlier in the year. Right now, we're sitting with 3 staff members who are positive for COVID. So moving to the junior high, very similar story, where week 14 and you know, led us to, you know, more, you know, 2 students, but all of a sudden from week 13 we went from 2 students that were positive, and 1 week we went to 13 students that were positive. So that was a huge disruption there, and you can see the reflection of the number of students that had to quarantine, and now that number has kind of settled. HPI, and we'll talk a little bit about this shortly, but you know, obviously the number of students that are being quarantined is down because we're not in session face-to-face. Students are learning remotely. And the concern that we have right now is, even though we are in week 17, students are not reporting. We have 5 students that are positive for COVID. Week 13, when we had to shut the building down because of the number of staff members that had to be quarantined or had it, the number of students that kind of triggered that in part was 6. So in that setting right now, we're sitting with 5 students, and that's worrisome to us. That in a time when we are fully remote, and we'll talk about what that looks like, the synchronous learning that's taking place. The principals will be here shortly talking about that. We still have a lot of students, you know, that are positive, in that setting the way it was before. It can cause a lot of disruption very quickly. Moving on to Fort Meigs, the elementary, again, just a reflection of the times that we're in, but you can see those numbers across all of our elementaries. Here is Frank's numbers, you know, have been relatively stable. And those students are back last week and back this week. And you can see the numbers have been, you know, boding well for face-to-face learning, which is the mode that we're in now. At Toth, you can see the results. Same here. The last 2 weeks, you know, going into this final week have been pretty positive. And then at Woodland, just the number of students that have to quarantine is a concern. Earlier, weeks 11 through 14. And right now we have 4 students at Woodland that are positive. So that's something that we're monitoring very closely. It's not that way at the other elementaries, but a lot of it was caught, again, last week students weren't, or 2 weeks ago students weren't in session. They're under isolation now. The reason why we don't have a large number of students that are being quarantined is because of that week following Thanksgiving. They got it, they were home, we didn't have to do the contact tracing in that building. So that is a positive, even though our numbers are up. It hasn't affected other students or staff members. And then the preschool is something that, again, we do have 1 student with it now in week 17. So looking ahead, I wanted to just share with you kind of the year to date in a couple categories in terms of the number of students that are positive for COVID and the number of staff members. So this is at the 17-week mark. You can see that the numbers over 17 weeks, single digits with the exception of Woodland. And then for the number of employees, you can see across, that varies as well. So that's something that is, again, very consistent with what we're finding in the elementaries. And we get questions where people ask, well, why are the elementaries back, these 2 weeks? And again, we've always defaulted from the standpoint that we want students to be in school face-to-face as much as possible. And as long as the data supports that, as long as we're not having the kind of, the week before Thanksgiving, if you recall, 15% of our students were quarantined or isolated. That is significantly disruptive to the learning process. So if we're not at that kind of level, then we should try to have students attend as much as we can. So the elementaries are really consistent. Taking another kind of look, the last 4 weeks from November 19th to the 10th, you can see that, where the numbers stand. So if you kind of toggle between the overall in the last 4 weeks, it gives you an indication of what's been happening in the last month with COVID. And for example, Fort Meigs, the whole 17-week total was 6. But 3 came within the last 4 weeks. So it's just an important indication where we had several weeks where we didn't have any cases, and now we're having, 1 or 2 pop up during that week. And again, that reflects the numbers that we're seeing in the community. But you can see kind of that 17-week total and then what's happened in the last 4 weeks. I know one of the questions that came up at the work session was, how is it that some schools, private schools was a question, they're able to have school and continue. And again, those buildings are very similar to the numbers that we're seeing here, and we're able to continue to. So I think that's important. As we go to the secondary level and HPI, I just wanted to share that same kind of comparison where, at the high school, for example, we've had 63 students positive for COVID this semester so far, 17 weeks. 15 has come in the last 4 weeks. For high school, you can see the employees, 15, 8 here in the last 4 weeks. And again, community spread, 3 of those weeks have been remote. So this is something that's happening outside of school because they're not in a face-to-face environment. But the junior high, you can see the junior high did very well. And we got to a point with the junior high where we said things are going well, let's bring the students back. And just like with all the other buildings where we saw that increase in that week leading into Thanksgiving and the week of Thanksgiving, 24 of the 32 students, were in the last 4 weeks. So that's a significant jump, and we reacted to that because we had to. In HPI, you can see here that the students, 20 total for the year to date. 10 of those happened in the last 4 weeks. For employees, the total has been 10, and 7.5 have been in the last, 4 weeks. So that's, interesting for us to continue to monitor and to see what's happening. So at any rate, moving forward, just, we shared this data here with the charts for the elementaries and preschools. And again, the reason I had those to kind of go through is just that stable, that those numbers have been fairly stable for us there, whereas in the other buildings we've seen some movement. So that leads us to recommendations. And we wanted to talk about, based on this data, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, what do we do moving forward? So I wanted to spend a little bit of time discussing that. So what we'd like to propose is after winter break, students would be returning to the learning environment on January 5th. What we're proposing is the week of January 5th through the 8th, going full remote in pre-K through 12. And that is based on what we understand about what happened at Thanksgiving. In that time period around when things were starting, families were coming together, and we saw that surge. And then what has happened now that we're 2-3 weeks away from Thanksgiving, the numbers are starting to fall. So we're anticipating, despite people's best efforts, that families are going to travel, they're going to get together, and that will bring an increase. So if we start students on that 5th, we're worried about that being in the middle of that kind of increase or that surge, and then having to quarantine and do those kinds of things. So beginning on January 12th, which is the second week after break, we'd like the high school, HPI, and the junior high return with alternating day hybrid schedule, which is the 2 days a week, face-to-face, which reduces the number of students that are in the classroom at any one time. The junior high, I wanted to just kind of focus on this a little bit. The junior high started out the school year that way. We had 12, 13 weeks where things were going great, and we said, our default is let's try to get more students face-to-face as much as we can, and then we kind of ran into that Thanksgiving ramp up and Thanksgiving weekend, and coming back we had to take a step back. So we're saying, based on what we know around that holiday, everybody indoors, let's begin that week with those students, 2 days a week. I'll talk more in depth about the junior high because that is a little different HPI, because that is a different recommendation that we had before when we started the year. The elementary schools and the preschool will start the 4-day face-to-face schedule. They're doing that right now. And we're saying after that 1 week of remote learning, bring them back 4 days a week. Despite what's happening outside our walls, we know inside the schools, and we just went over that data, it's pretty consistent. It's very predictable. And we know that can change. And if it does, then we're going to take those steps to make it, to do what we can to keep kids in school, but maybe reduce the number of students that are attending at any one time. Almost like a step-down unit for somebody who's having therapy or leaving a hospital. We've never considered elementary 2 days a week, but the elementary principals did come up with a plan. So we do have that in our toolbox. We're not recommending it at this time. But again, our goal is to get students face-to-face as much as we can without that kind of disruption. And then that takes us to the board meeting on proposed board meeting on February 16th. We're anticipating that's when the board at the organizational meeting will select the date for that February meeting. And at that point in time, we'd like to take a look at the data, especially at the junior high and HPI, present it to the board and say, okay, this is our recommendation moving forward, which we're hoping is bringing the students back 4 days a week. That's our goal, but the data has to be there to support that. So I want to go over the HPI decision and what led us to this, because this is a little bit different. For the first 12 weeks, as we showed earlier, that we had very few cases among students and employees. The first 12 weeks, we had 4 students that were positive and 0 staff members. So that was with 4 days a week, everybody, at HPI. For the first 13 weeks, it worked very well until it didn't. And what ended up happening was we saw 6 students positive in week 13 for COVID. And the fallout occurred the following week when we had 4 students that were positive and another 10 that were in quarantine. And we didn't have enough subs available to keep the building up and running and functioning with that many out. And that's what caused us to make that change. As I mentioned earlier, we've got 5 students that are positive now. And in that environment, 5 students in a classroom setting could cause a significant amount of people to have to be in quarantine. So when you think about it this way, if we have throughout our elementaries 5 students positive, let's say in all 4, one in each of our buildings, so that would be 4 students. In that setting, it would take out, quarantine their class more than likely, and a teacher. But at HPI, that one student changes class every period. So the potential of those 4 students now could be taking out more teachers, and we saw that happen. And that's a concern. So why there is more positivity with our students, and we're seeing that now, the potential of getting into a situation where every night we're talking about what classrooms are covered, which ones aren't, and then ultimately having to close. So what we're saying now is let's return where we can space the classrooms out a little bit better. So if there is that positivity, one, it is not taking the teacher out because the teacher can now distance where they won't be put into quarantine, and the classmates will see that reduction as well. So that is our recommendation, which again is moving away from what we want, especially for the younger students, is to have them there every day. But we know with the amount of positivity that's happening, putting them in that environment could be setting them up for longer periods of time being out. Where quarantines, hundreds of kids being quarantined for 14 days, that is negative. And then teachers being out for that period of time. So we're hoping that we put this into place, get through the winter break, get into January, get a better understanding of what's happening, and then let's make a decision moving forward. And again, our goal is always to try to bring students back in for more contact. Mr. Best shared this picture with us. This on the left is a classroom that we have set up with, you can see all the students that would be attending. And that's what we've been doing. And for 14, 15 weeks, that's worked out really well for us. But we're at a point where it's not working out so well. So what would be different, how it would work, you can see in that other photo with that alternating day schedule, you can see the ability to space students away from each other, and then the teacher can be in a 6-foot kind of barrier. And if that student in the second picture is positive, the amount of impact that it has to the peers and to the teacher is significantly reduced. So we're looking at that. And that's kind of where we're coming from, our recommendation. We get lots of emails, and it's always hard to respond to all the emails, so we do look at them, and when we put these presentations together, we try to answer those questions. So if we don't get back to individuals with email, lengthy responses, we hope the information here covers that. So I wanted to give the board just kind of a flavor, and I know some of you are copied on these and some of you aren't, but these are some of the questions that we're getting, and these are pretty typical. But why is pre-K 4 going back in person and everyone else is remote? How is that decision made? What data is considered? So I think we covered that today. I think we covered that the last board meeting too, because that was an important decision. Because we're really looking at the data, and we're not just saying, hey, the whole district is doing this. We're looking at it building by building, and that's important. Why are the upper grade levels not being staffed adequately so the kids can come in person? The staffing has nothing to do with the kids being more in person. It has everything to do with what we just talked about. When we've had almost 900 students quarantined and isolated the week before Thanksgiving, doesn't matter how many staff you have, that is so disruptive to what's happening. Those are 800 and some kids that aren't able to come to school or do an activity for 14 days. And so this isn't about staffing as much as it is about trying to put in an educational delivery system that is predictable, that is something that parents and students and staff can plan for. Why are sports and extracurricular activities still going on when school is being put on hold? Why not err on the side of caution and cancel everything? This is a great question. We get it a lot. It's ironic that we had coaches up here personally talking about what it meant to their students, to those families, to be able to have the opportunity just to have a season, because those experiences are life-changing. And we lost that in the spring. There were no activities, and that was painful for those students and families. We will want to give our students an opportunity to play in concerts, to perform on stages, to compete in athletics as long as we have the ability to do it, and as long as it is not disrupting the learning process, because that is really where you cross that line and we do have to shut down. And right now it has not crossed that line. But it is challenging. It is challenging. Why can't HPI come back in person? These students are not independent as the junior high and high school students and need to be in school. Agreed. I don't disagree with that statement. But I do know having 5 students that are positive that we know of, and we're not in session, so we're relying on people reporting this to us. If those students were in class, we very well could be where we were before Thanksgiving, where we're having to shut things down because of the quarantine and isolation that has to take place. So we want them back in person, but right now, just with the amount of positive cases at that age band, it makes it really hard for us to do that. And then to plan to have school operating the way that it needs to. So that's kind of where we are, and I'll open it up to any questions before we move to the next agenda item. Thank you.
Tom, one of the questions that I had, and it was something that we discussed, that's the word I wanted, that we discussed at great lengths before we started this hybrid plan, and that was the actual rotation. So Monday, it was clear, was the better day logically to choose to be off. But then there was a question as to, do we do, for lack of any other word, Group A on Tuesday, Wednesday, Group B Thursday, Friday, or do we do Group A on Tuesday, Thursday, and B on Wednesday, Friday? Has there been any further look at that? Is there any advantage to going back to back versus the alternating?
You know, and we'll have the principals up for the next portion, and certainly they can follow up with this when they come up. Mm-hmm. Doing this, we had to open up the patient a little bit, so to speak, because Mr. Best, to put the families on the same A-B, schedule, had to communicate with the junior high and high school so that we could make sure that we were putting, that we weren't disrupting families. So the children would be on the same schedule, regardless of their building. So there was conversations about this model and what we were doing, and this was the time to make a change. And the recommendation coming forward was, let's continue down this path. So we could get into the specifics, but there's pros and cons to each of those approaches.
Yeah, my original argument was that academically it made more sense to do it the way that we're doing it. But COVID-wise, for sanitation-wise, I wonder if it doesn't make sense to do one group back-to-back than the other, and would that help improve? I know there are some districts around that did do the back-to-back routine, some even doing Wednesday as the day off, but Brooke did a fabulous presentation on why Monday for us was a good day to choose to be off, and it made a lot of sense. So I still totally agree with that, but I was just curious about.
My first thought, Mrs. Larimer, is that consistency in habits, and the staff's on a roll now. We're going to hear pretty soon about the synchronous learning style with the Zoom. The change again midstream may just throw the whole momentum off. That's not looking at COVID or cleaning. I'm just looking at how things are going relatively smoothly, I think, now with the Zoom scheduling, with the synchronous learning. But they'll report to us here shortly. That's my first thought. Mr. Hassler, I was just wondering, like the January 5th through the 8th, coming back on the 5th with vacation going, or with spring break, with winter break being through the 1st, has there been any discussion of keeping it the 12th, going one more week with the remote, and then coming back to hybrid?
The only conversation we've had is, does 2 weeks, would that make a difference in terms of that surge? Again, Mr. Pullman, there's no right or wrong answer. That could make just as much sense as 1 week as going with 2 weeks. I think our feeling was defaulting again, trying to get the students back in with their teachers sooner. And for some students, when you think about it, and I talked to some parents, elementary parents, who were saying, why couldn't we have been remote? Well, we went remote the week before Thanksgiving, and then all the way through break. That's 6 weeks. Now we're talking about extending it 7 weeks. I think that's what shied us away from just anticipating the surge, our increase. Hopefully we're wrong, but then getting the kids back as soon as we could.
So there still could be a conversation if we get into that week of the 5th of what happens. I'm just looking at the teachers' preparation for all they have to go through, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. 1 week, 2 weeks, who knows?
And I just want to piggyback off of what Ray is saying, because I do agree with you, Ray. Because initially, way back when we were talking about the high school going back 4 days a week, it was the 19th, and your reasoning was because we wanted to give 2 weeks after Christmas and New Year's. So I actually agree and like what Ray is saying. I think 2 weeks, just like we did for Thanksgiving, 2 weeks remote, makes more sense in my eyes.
Yep, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just agreeing with what Ray's proposing. I agree with that.
I think going back to the high school, the other thing is we were switching from having, the anticipating, but also it was changing from 2 days a week, transitioning 1,600 kids into 4 days a week. So that extra week was ramping up that, starting that semester and then making that transition. So that was also part of it. It wasn't just the anticipating the surge, but it was also the work that has to be done in the classroom to get the semester started. Kids need to be scheduled. I have a schedule change. All those kinds of things happen in a normal year, and then allowing for that to happen and then begin to transition into that. So part of it was the surge, but also part of it was the actual transitioning from 2 days a week to 4 days a week too.
And I'd also like to add, at the board meeting, again, we don't know the date, but to discuss HBI and the junior high going back. I'm a little disappointed that the high school's not on there. I'd like to have that discussion. But I feel that if that is indeed the date that they go back 4 days a week, I'd like to see it more, not 2 weeks later. Like, I think the transition needs to be immediate. It's easier to get the kids back in school the next day than opposed to, not go, taking a day off to plan for them to stay home. I think we need to have it more immediate instead of waiting. Like the last time, we could have had the kids in sooner, and junior high would have gone, 1 or 2 more weeks by the time we discussed it and then rolled it out. So I'd like to see that transition be immediate, like the next day on Wednesday. Teachers know they are back 4 days a week. Of course, that would be a Wednesday. And that actually would be good, because that would be a Wednesday. They'd go 2 weeks that day, then the next week would be full. I don't understand what a teacher, what the one day you have half the students, the next day you have them all. Like, I don't understand why you need another 2 weeks to anticipate. Like, if we know and we say to the teachers in the district, it will be the next day that they're going back. Be ready.
I just,
I think we just need to pivot a little faster.
I think from a teacher standpoint, that may be more difficult than I can answer, or you and Mr. Hostler can probably get that from the principals and the teachers. I think that pivot may be harder than we're thinking, harder than we're stating, that preparation time. Because if you think about it, they're going from where they were from hybrid, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, to Schoology. Now they're in Zoom. I mean, it's been a lot of transitioning, different styles of learning. And I can't speak for the teachers. I'm just thinking, since I've been in there before, it may be difficult. I don't know.
Well, I know, but if you're going and we're in the hybrid mode and they're teaching every other day, you just have more kids the next day.
Is the suggesting that we're talking about, so the board makes a decision on the 16th and the students are back in on the 17th?
Yeah,
That's
I
what
think
you're
we
saying?
need to pivot faster, getting these kids in and not like discussing it and then, you know, two days or 2 weeks rather later, like we did before. Like,
Yeah.
when I was looking back, I realized the junior high could have gone faster and then we would have had more time before then it wasn't. Then it was back to hybrid or being, you know, closed.
So,
Yeah, I
so a
think-
conversation about faster is probably worthwhile. I don't know about the next day. I don't know how chairs get moved, and there's probably 100 logistical things that have to happen that you need more than 12 hours to do. But I could see a conversation that, you know, does it have to be 2 weeks? I don't think it can be a day.
I have a couple questions. First of all, that pertain to all of this. First of all, the 5 to 8 going back to everybody all remote, preschool through 12. I think K through 4, or I think preschool through 4, full remote is a waste of everybody's time. I personally, and I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again, if I were king of the mountain, we would go stay on vacation 5 through 8, nothing, no school, no Zoom, no nothing, just vacation. We would add May 31st through June 5th to the end of the year. I think that this is, never before in my life have I realized the importance of the teacher face-to-face with the child, because it's something we've all taken for granted. And we all say, well, we'll have school and they'll be in school and they'll get good teachers and bad teachers and they'll have a great year. All of a sudden, that whole world has turned upside down. And I look at children and the way they're the way they're failing. I look at the suicide rate for 10 to 14-year-olds. That's the leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds. Something is breaking down. The leading cause of death for 15 to 34-year-olds has also, by suicide, has also skyrocketed. Something is breaking down. I think when we went to the all Zoom and kids report every day, I think that was a big improvement, just a really big improvement to requiring them to come. So I like that. So in my opinion, that May 31st through June 4th is an invaluable week where we probably all, from K through 11, because the 12th graders will have graduated, I think we'll have trouble getting them back. But for preschool through 11, it's a full week of working with your teacher. I never thought I'd appreciate it so much, but I really do now. So that's one consideration I would have. Second consideration, we're going to have our our restructuring meeting, or what do they call that? The first
Organizational meeting.
organizational meeting in January, right? What's the date?
4th, it's proposed.
The 4th? And then we are not meeting again until the 16th?
No.
No, January 19th would be,
Okay, so why would we wait for any discussion about when to move data till the 16th? Why wouldn't we be gradually discussing it on the 4th, on the 19th, on the 2nd?
I certainly hope we would.
I think we'll continue to provide data as we have every single board meeting, and that would continue in January and February. But the data that we have at the organizational meeting, for example, clearly the kids aren't even back yet, so we
Right,
don't have
right.
any data.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later, we're going to have data with 1 week remote and 1 week not remote. So I don't know how much that shares with us, you know, how much information that
Okay,
we really are
okay.
able to glean, because we'll have a week of, you know, remote if the board moves in that direction, and then a week face-to-face. So it's kind of apples and oranges, kind of like what we're showing now for the high school,
Right.
junior high. So the thought was, let's get a couple of weeks running the way that we are, and then let's look at what that data says. But, you know, clearly,
Okay. I guess my thought is, let's not make February 16th a date in stone. Maybe there's a miracle. And like right now, the state of Ohio is plateauing, hopefully.
It
And
is.
maybe we'll start to drop.
right.
Maybe there will be a miracle. So I just don't want that to be okay, we will not discuss reopening schools until the 16th.
Right.
If we can discuss it earlier, let's do it earlier.
yeah, I took that to mean you're talking about going back to 4 days? Is that what that?
Yeah.
But you're saying, Mrs. Downs, talk about that sooner, to go 4 days a week?
Well, yeah,
Keep talking about it.
just don't make this, we will not discuss this until the 16th. We will discuss this as we go along, our deadline being the 16th.
And that's fine. I mean, part of it is trying to give parents, because parents are at home and they're watching this and saying, if I have an HPI child and we're going 2 days a week, when will that next thing happen? So we wanted to give them an idea of that. So that's something that we can change. And if we wanted to put it in the work session in February, that first Tuesday in February, to look at that, I mean, that's fine. If things are going great, we've made changes on the fly, and we've made recommendations on the fly based on the data that's happening. So part of it is wanting to give parents kind of a benchmark, like, okay, this is when that can happen. And I think one of the things that I hear from parents is they appreciate about what we've done is it's been very predictable. We've worked really hard to make it something that they can count on and rely on. And when we haven't, when we've had to close, they understand the reasons why. We've been very clear about that. So putting this second, you know, the re-entry into the second semester together, we wanted to emulate that and give parents the ability to plan. But certainly moving forward, you know, or moving to you know, an earlier time, that's fine. As long as we're communicating with parents when to expect that to happen, and that's primarily here. The other thing I want to mention, just circle back, it's a good point to say let's try to speed up that process. But I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a lag, because just transportation, you know, when you're picking up every other day students, your bus routes change, and we'll need to have time to flip the switch to say, for example, now tomorrow we're picking up all the kids. That means bus routes are going to change. So the time that my fifth grader is going out there is going to change, because now they're picking up the other fifth graders that were going on the opposite day. So part of it is, you know, can we kind of condense that? I think we can. I don't think it has to be 2 weeks, but I think the 12 hours, moving furniture back in. The picture I showed the furniture out, moving the furniture back in. The other consideration is, you know, to Mr. Bennington's point, the logistics, food service. All of a sudden, 12 hours, do we have enough food in the freezer to serve all of those kids? you know, there's some of those kinds of things that certainly we can expedite, but, but I think we have to keep in mind there's a lot of moving parts with just bringing the kids back.
Plus, we have to deal with PVA too, right? I mean, how many are we going to lose to PVA? How many are coming back from PVA? I mean, and that affects the bus routes, the bus routes.
Yeah.
So we got that. I do, I don't know what it was that Gretchen said, but it did kind of flash back into my mind the graphs that you showed. Why would we put preschool especially on full remote? I mean, I don't know that you want to split your elementary and say, okay, well, there's like nobody in first or second grade and the first half or the first part of elementary has to come back. That could probably be somebody's nightmare, but I don't understand why we would include preschool in that. They were pretty flatlined all the way through it. Wouldn't it make more sense to have them back in school? I mean, I can't imagine that remote learning for a preschooler is very beneficial. Not that they couldn't do it if that's what they had to do. I mean, those ladies over there are phenomenal, and I don't mean to imply that, but it doesn't seem to me to be data-driven or educationally sound for the preschool.
Well, again, maybe, and I'm not trying to counter what you're saying, but maybe it's the parents again, if they have an elementary student who's staying home, and then they gotta get their preschool across the river, it becomes a nightmare for parents when they've got ages, all different types. So we think about the teachers and the students, we gotta think about the parents too. I don't know if that's the answer, but that might be for preschoolers.
Yeah, I mean, it just falls back to that idea that if there is an uptick, you know, it's not always the students, it could be the staff too. So if staff are, you know, they get together with family and then they're not able to be there, you know. So part of it is just that rationale, but it's across the board because we're reacting to the potential surge that could happen with staff of the preschool too, not necessarily, you know, with the students. I have it up here, you know, very low incidence, but again, you're seeing, you know, from relatively nothing happening, all of a sudden, you know, you're starting to see some changes there. I mean, it happens. So that was our thought process, but certainly whatever the board would like to see done, I mean, that's.
And I also got kind of confused a little bit in what we were saying, because I was on the train that said these first 2 weeks in January we would not be back except for remote, anticipating the holidays and what that could do to the numbers. And now it's down to 1 week. Why did y'all decide to get rid of the 1 week? I'm sure, I must have missed that, I apologize.
I think it was referring to the high school. The high school originally, we wanted to bring back 4 days a week.
Okay.
And we wanted them to be, to be remote until that time when we could make that switch. Part of it was the surge. The other part of it was just flipping the switch and having the 100 teachers prepare for the 1,600 students, having all 4 there. And, you know, the food service, all those kinds of building operations. We wanted to be able to do that because over break, we don't have the staff in, they're off. So, you know, we're ramping up, you know, the end of December, we're getting ready for exams, we're doing all the things to wrap up the year. Break is 2 weeks where there's nobody in school, and then we need a little bit of time to prepare for that, and then we're having schedule changes and things of that nature, so.
Okay.
So it wasn't all surge, it was part of just that high school is a
Trying to
different
get
animal.
the high school back.
And that was only
Okay.
applied to the high school, bringing them back and having those discussions. And the high
Okay.
school is just, the conversation that you heard me talk about HPI where they do change classes and that one student contacting with those 5 teachers.
Right.
The high school is that on steroids.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge with the high school.
So the reason why we could reduce that original thought of 2 weeks down to 1 week is because we would be coming back in a hybrid situation rather than the original
Correct.
4-day
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That was that little gap I missed.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
I'm back on board.
Yeah.
Well, what about proposing where we keep the first week, the 4th through the 8th, I think it is, hybrid. I gotta look at my calendar here because I don't want to,
5th through the 8th.
well, the 4th being, the Monday would be
So
remote.
5th through the 8th.
Pardon me?
The 5th through the 8th.
The 5th through the 8th. Everybody full remote, but then the 12th through the 15th, letting pre-K through 4th come back, but keep HBI, junior high, and the high school. 1 more week, remote, and then returning the 19th, hybrid. It
So
sounds like a
bringing-
couple of
so
us
that-
like the option of the 2 weeks with the higher grades where we see the most cases. Again, and when you're talking data, I'm going to piggyback on what Gretchen said. We keep on talking about the data and the PowerPoint, and it's all COVID related, not all. There's other issues like Gretchen mentioned, suicide, academically, how the students are doing. So I like to look at it at a bigger lens than just COVID cases, but what about that option where we would offer full remote the first week, then pre-K through 4th go back the second week, keeping again, we know it's more prevalent in the older grades, then coming back with the hybrid model on the 19th.
But that's what the board says. It says elementary 4 days. And that would start on the 12th. Because the 11th is a Monday, which is automatically a hybrid day. So the second week, the elementary and the preschool are back.
Well, I'm
It's
saying
just
then keep,
HBI, PJS, or the junior high and the high school.
right, and keep
She's
them
saying
full remote.
Put that on remote. So the line underneath, beginning January 12th, that next bullet point, keep them on the full remote. Keep the bottom 3 the way they are, but take that first bullet point, let them stay, since that's where our cases are at. Keep them out that 1 week more, and then bring them back.
Correct.
So it's kind
So
of a
now you're
compromise between the
suggesting
two ideas.
They start later? They won't start till the 19th then?
Yeah, that's exactly what you were saying 5 minutes ago, yes.
No, I'm saying everybody starts back on the 12th. It's just hybrid, or 4 days a week.
You didn't mean that.
That's what it is.
No,
Yeah, that's
Kelly,
what it
you
is.
didn't mean that the HPIP and the junior high and the high school would not be, they'd be in school, but they'd just be on remote, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, not that they'd be off, they'd be in remote, they'd be in school,
Exactly what's going on right now.
yeah, so
What we've had
5
the
through
last
8,
2
everybody's
weeks.
on remote.
The last 2 weeks before break, pre-K through 4th is going to school. 5th through 12th is full online. You were talking about full online, and I agree with you. I think, and I'm only speaking for my daughter, it's working better for her. So, and everything works different for everybody. I get that. Some kids like it, some kids don't. My suggestion is the January 5th through the 8th, full remote. The next week, keep it full remote for 5th through 12th. Again, we know those are the highest cases. And bring back pre-K through 4th in person. Then on the 19th, we come back hybrid model, 5th through 12th.
Does that make sense, Tom? It seems to make like,
I-
it seems to
I-
be like a nice compromise between the two thoughts.
I mean, there isn't a wrong answer. I mean, that would work. And, our default, and we've said this all along, is to try to get students back face-to-face as sooner than later. So that again, for those students, doesn't sound like much, but it's 6 weeks now going to 7 weeks that they have been out of the classroom environment and they've been online. So that was the reason why we wanted to respect the potential surge, but then try to get them back so that they can get in front of their teachers and with their teachers and not delay. But
we're really talking 2 days that week. We're talking 2 days in person, as opposed to delaying it another week, making sure that the, cases in the community are down.
I guess my question is for Mike and for the principals. Will the teachers still do on my days that I don't have class, I go on Tuesday and Thursday, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, will I still be zoomed in for part of the class?
No.
Or it will go back to,
Not in the hybrid format.
No, not in the hybrid.
it won't?
You get no interaction on those 3 days from teachers.
Because I actually thought, from the feedback I'm getting from parents, they like the Zoom every day versus hybrid and nothing.
I would say the same is true with what I'm hearing.
yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Hostler? I think why don't we hear from the principals next, and then we can come back to the school day. And again, like Mr. Hostler said, there's no wrong answer. There's just so many players involved, and sometimes I think we just have to allow principals and the teachers, Mr. Hostler, give us some direction, because they're in the trenches, so to speak. So, Mr. Hostler?
Yep. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was this synchronous learning. So we asked the principals to come and share and just describe a little bit about what it does and how it works and how it's going. So, thanks.
Johnny, you're gonna miss the best part. Stay 6 feet apart from me. Thank you, Mr. Hostler. Before I get into how the schedule's working, I wanted to congratulate Chris Harper. She was a big influence on my son when he was at Fort Meigs, and I really appreciate all the help that she gave him and all the work she does for all of our kids. I also wanted to recognize Mr. Jaco for all of the hard work he did over the fall season. As you know, Ray, juggling an athletic schedule is never easy, but with all the changes that took place and all the contracts that were changed at the last second, he did a tremendous job, he and his staff, in making sure the fall program came off as well as it did. And the boys and girls cross-country coaches, you talked about, they both mentioned the size of their teams. That's an attribute attributed directly to those coaches and making it something that the kids are really enjoy doing, despite the fact that Mr. Hostler shows up at all their meets. So congratulations to those student athletes and their coaches. So what I think we're gonna talk about, the three of us have talked regularly, way too much for my liking over the course of the semester. And the way the schedule is working out right now. So to refresh your memories, we were on the 2-day-a-week, a gold and a black schedule, students meeting on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Wednesdays, Fridays. To your point, Sue, I've been in meetings every week with area principals, all of whom that are on hybrid have said that they're doing an alternating day. None of them are going in back-to-back schedules.
Okay.
The day in between has been a day for work to be assigned so that students can do independent work, be ready for the class the next time.
Okay.
And the one thing that our teachers said is the current schedule we're in right now, which is we're running a 50-minute period on the odd numbers periods at the high school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the even numbered periods on Wednesdays and Fridays. And though that time that we talked about doing it a little differently, we talked about a 25-minute period at one point and running all of the classes in one day. We decided against that, mostly because we wanted the flexibility of that time. And all of our teachers have reported that that's
a benefit to have that full 50 minutes to work with. One of the other local area districts is doing a 25-minute all-day period, and they're having a lot of difficulty because once attendance is taken, kids logged in, they start doing things, it's really coming down to about 18, 19 minutes of instructional time. So they're really liking the 50-minute period. The other thing that we made a decision about early on in the process, even as early as last spring, was to go with a Zoom format as opposed to a Google Meet format. Those districts using Google are finding that they don't have the flexibility that our teachers have. Zoom being able to create the breakout rooms and do some other controls that teachers have of the classroom does not exist within the Google platform. And so the principals have said that they really wish they could have been in the Zoom format because of that. So it's been very beneficial for our kids. I don't have fancy handouts like some people because I did the work myself and not pawned it off on somebody else. But I wanted some. I wanted to share some things with you. In the hybrid format, our lowest number of absences from one or more classes on any given day was 140. The highest number was 296. In our virtual format, the highest number is 163 and the lowest is 109. So kids are attending more in this environment. Now what I will say is, what that doesn't account for is those kids who are on an off day. So if you're on a Tuesday, Thursday schedule in the hybrid, were you counted in attendance on Wednesday when you didn't have to report, but you had to turn in work to be counted as attending the class? They may not have done that and therefore been counted as absent. So that's a possibility. So like you, I've talked to many students and parents, and the ones with whom I have interacted recently said they like the daily contact from teachers. They like the regularity of the schedule, the daily schedule, knowing that at 9:40 they're going to log in with their teachers every day. That's a huge benefit over what happened last spring, and they don't have the independence of the off days in the hybrid. Some feel that there's an increase in the workload, that they're getting a little bit more work. I'm wondering if that's not a condition of us being at the end of the quarter and the semester, where that's really getting a little bit more of a workload going in. They do report that Mondays are tougher without the in-between days of the hybrid to catch up with work. And so you get my faculty bulletin on Fridays. I did ask teachers to be mindful of their workload this week so as not to overload students because everybody's trying to get in assessments before the end of the quarter and semester. The one thing that they've also reported that it's easier to contact their teachers during office hours now. So the teachers really couldn't hold office hours during the week when they were in a hybrid schedule on the kids' non-work days, right? So they only had Mondays that they could do things, and teachers were having a tough time catching up. In this environment, they know that in the morning or afternoon, their teachers are available to them for office hours to discuss classwork. The kids are feeling they're more organized as there's not the freedom of a day of just homework. Navigating the independence of the workload is difficult in a hybrid format because you have just 7 classes giving you a whole bunch of stuff to do, and you've got a day to do it, and it's kind of one of those things where you've got this chunk of stuff ahead of you, and how do you eat the elephant, you know? The kids don't know how to do that, just one chunk at a time. So they get a little overwhelmed. But by contrast, there are others, primarily seniors and upperclassmen, who feel like they liked that independence because they could get into it, get their work done, and then have the rest of the day to themselves to do either work or to work out, to practice their activities, whatever it happens to be. But those, again, were mostly seniors, and those kids were self-motivated and probably ready for college, you know, a couple months ago. The teachers report that being synchronous with all students has created much more rich conversations in their classrooms, even through Zoom. Having 10 kids in the classroom, when you ask a question, they get a little self-conscious that they can't get lost in a crowd. The Zoom has provided a little bit more rich environment, and that's coming from our physics teacher, who says that the conversations are better through Zoom than being 6 feet away and trying to be heard in a small classroom where they're really afraid to be wrong in that environment, and it's being pointed out.
Interesting.
The one thing one of the teachers said is they're not worlds apart in what they're doing, the hybrid versus the Zoom, where they thought there was going to be a big difference in not having a connection with kids. They're actually feeling a little bit more connection. There's significantly more engagement than last spring by leaps and bounds. The one thing a teacher said is we have consistency. There's a connection with kids. A Schoology message in a hybrid format may not go answered right away. A teacher sends out to a kid, hey, you need to get this thing done. They may not hear from that student for another day and a half before they get back to them. Now, because the kids are logged in every day, they see those messages and they're getting connections more quickly. One of the interesting things is students reported to teachers that they like seeing their school friends, the kids that they only see at school, and were on separate schedules in a hybrid format, and they like being able to see them, even if they don't interact much. Just seeing them in the classroom, seeing their faces pop up is beneficial to them. And the 50-minute period allows teachers time to do activities, small group work in the breakout rooms, discussions. That's been a benefit to teachers to have that, as opposed to what we had considered at one point was a 25-minute schedule. Now, despite that, the positives, their teachers are finding that they really miss, and the kids miss, a face-to-face connection. They're getting it through a screen, but it's not the same interaction. We know that. The virtual schedule would not work as well as if we had not done the hybrid schedule this fall. So we did the right thing in doing the hybrid schedule. Having them meet at some point together, and maybe even in that smaller environment, was beneficial because teachers make a more personal connection in that smaller group initially. This would not work well if they hadn't had that time, so that was a benefit to it. One of the teachers said that they feel like they're going more slowly. He and his colleagues have talked about they can't get through as much material. Well, we knew that to be true to begin with. We knew we were not going to get through as much in this school year the way it is, but it feels a little more sluggish even now. Now, I will say that we're okay with that in our typical curriculum. We want to be able to get kids to the next step. We want to have them progress by that grade level in whatever that environment is, but let's focus on the most important topics. And we maybe can't get to that last folder of the year that we like to do. That's okay. Let's get the kids where they need to be and focus on those big things. This becomes more problematic in AP classes where we can't control the curriculum. But that's typically, frankly, some of the teachers have said they're holding extra sessions on their off days. If they have the kids in an AP class on an odd numbered day, they're maybe meeting in an even numbered after school, after the school time sessions, to meet with those kids who want to talk about the AP classes. And that's actually working pretty well. The one big drawback for this virtual environment is music, PE, and art. Because despite what you see in the concerts on Zoom and on the YouTube videos, that's nearly impossible to accomplish when everybody has different speeds in their internet. There's no synchronicity to the playing. There's synchronicity when we can talk, but to play an instrument in tune in time doesn't work. So that really suffers in that regard. But that's how things are going right now at the high school. It's not a terrible environment. It's one that we predicted would be successful if we did it right. And so far, we're doing a lot of the right things for the kids. But at the end of the day, we like seeing them in the hallway.
And I think special education is also another category that we have to try to do some problem solving. So.
Yeah, the one thing we have found with that is kids are still in their academic assist periods with an intervention specialist, and because we have the time before and after school, we're actually able to try to connect with those kids. Now, not all of them join us at the end of the school day, but we try to connect with them that way, and many have responded pretty positively. The one thing a lot of our special needs students have is a lack of organization. And so this really kind of helps them stay organized because they don't have a free day. Now some, yeah, they just can't function without being with somebody. But others are doing pretty well with it. In fact, I was in an IEP meeting this morning, and the parent reported that the student was doing quite well in this environment, and she didn't expect that. So that was a nice thing to hear. So. The thing is too, that we're talking about kids a little older.
What Mike has said, we really have seen the same type of result at the junior high. Many similar things with how it has worked and how it's worked for our kids. What I did was I put a folder at your desk there just to give you an idea of many of the things that Mike, myself, and Scott collaborated together to be able to send something consistent to families so they could see what was happening. And that first one is just the letter, and then it has the chart, the spreadsheet that gives the daily schedule for students on, it looks like this, on Monday through Friday. So you can follow exactly what they're doing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the students and parents had this in advance. The second part that went with that is there was another one that looked like this, because we felt like if you looked at that, sometimes that could be easily confusing to a parent or to a family. So we had a teacher who actually developed the one that looks like this table here, that made it much easier for families to read. So our teachers then even took this one a step further. They actually inserted, and the next one you'll see the links right in that. So when a student goes into their Schoology, all they have to do is click right on those links. And it makes it really easy then for them to get into their Zoom classrooms and their Zoom sessions. So as we've gone through this, we've learned, what makes it easier and more convenient as possible for our students and families to access those in there. Included in there was, this came from the high school, the Zoom ground rules for students to follow. That's right on their Schoology account as well. I myself and our other administrators have been able to get into the Zoom classrooms, and it's fun. It's enjoyable to be in there, because one of the first things the teachers said to me, there were some kids that I didn't recognize because I'd never seen them without a mask.
Wow.
And they said I was taking attendance, and I wasn't sure who that student was.
Wow.
And even I think the same would be reciprocated back for the students to the teachers, where they're actually seeing the teachers be able to smile, laugh, and have that interaction, that they haven't been able to have. And they've been able to do that on Zoom. The other part, I've heard this over and over from teachers, with that 50 minutes, they can use that block of time however they want. So they'll have kids that they'll say, I'll be in here. If you have a question, I'll spend that extra time with you on that assignment. So they might spend 25 minutes teaching, and then the student has another 15 to 20 minutes within there that they can come in and have that interaction with the teacher right there on Zoom. So we've seen quite a bit of that. The next one, it's kind of a thicker packet, but it just gives you an idea of what Schoology looks like to a student when they go on Schoology. And this particular teacher, it's a 7th grade social studies section. And if you look at that, you can go through and see where she's inserted the link right in Schoology. Again, for the students to go in, click right on it, and then also go through all those different assignments. And you can look in there. It looks like they're doing Julius Caesar and different things in there right now. You can see what they're, right now the curriculum in 7th grade social studies would be. But I think, if anything, this kind of shows you the amount of time and work that a teacher is putting in to putting all of this together. It's an enormous amount, and they deserve a ton of credit for what they're doing by putting these together. And what they do in their classroom by using Pear Deck, Nearpod, the technology that they're using. I was in the class, I was even able to participate in the survey, show how much little I knew about some history, and participate in it as well. And just that interactive piece, I think the students enjoy as well. The next packet is our current attendance rate with the Zoom sessions. And if you look across that, you're going to see probably 95% or higher attendance rate in the majority of those Zoom classroom sessions. And that's a testament to our families, to our students, and I think saying that we want to be in here, we want to learn. And people have asked me, well, what's your normal attendance rate during a school year? It's right around there. It's about around 97, 98%. So we're achieving an attendance rate in our Zoom classroom sessions that's very equal or close to what we would throughout a regular school year. The last one is our teachers have tried to also keep a sense of normalcy. We're doing a Spirit Week this week. Tomorrow is our Wear White Day. Tuesday, you can see Mr. Bucher with his Cheesehead hat on. He's a big Packers fan. And then you can see on Friday will be our, typically it was our crazy Christmas wear day, or your ugly sweater day, or what. So students can dress up however they like on the holiday theme on that Friday. And again, one of our teachers already did a hat day, and she had 32 students in that class, and 30 out of the 32 participated. Wow. So it tells you really they're enjoying that part of it. I think they're also, Mike touched on enjoying seeing their friends without masks as well, and having that interaction. It's not the absolute answer to everything. Like Mike said, we all know that. But for what we've put together in a short amount of time, with the 15-minute periods and being able to have that interaction throughout the days, has worked very well.
Question, but sort of stating the obvious. Obviously, if you're on quarantine and or have COVID, you are still participating and joining in, and the attendance reflects that.
That's a great point, Kelly, because the students are not falling behind.
Right, right.
Yep. Even though they're on quarantine, they're still having that same level of education of those students. Whereas when we were on that hybrid, or if we were all in, they were missing out on that instruction from the teacher.
Yes, and having a daughter
sure.
that was quarantined, yes. That was,
Yeah, it's not a good, fun experience.
Right.
Right. So.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So why don't you, Tom's passing around a packet for you. One of the things you'll find about the Hall Prairie plan is we're the bridge between the elementary schools and Don and Mike's buildings. So instead of doing the 50-minute block schedule, what we ended up settling on was a schedule where the teachers got to see their kids every day. So we're set up in 30-minute blocks with 15-minute intervals in between. So what that does for us is it allows our teachers to see the kids every single day, and then after class for about 5 to 10 minutes, they can sit and work with individual students in between classes. And then for parents, the advantage is they have a set schedule every day from 8 to 11, and then in the afternoon, our teachers then can work with individual students or small groups. The collaboration piece that you see there, our teachers have been working very hard to make sure the kids were prepared for this kind of event. So since day one, the kids have been learning how to use Schoology, how to work in a virtual environment, and take some initiative in getting things done. So for example, on our asynchronous Mondays, our teachers spend about 5 to 10 minutes during their class time teaching and discussing how to do their Monday assignment. And then starting after school, they have access to get that assignment done all the way through midnight on Monday. Part of this plan too includes a paraprofessional schedule where our intervention specialists worked with our paras to create a schedule for them where they can work with individual students and attend those classes that they would have if we were in session. I think one of the most interesting things that has happened is, our teachers have really thrived these last couple of years collaborating with one another, and when we had to make some adjustments to start the year, they really missed that. But one of the things that we've been seeing is that in this environment, there's a lot of collaboration going on. They're making videos for each other to share with their students. They're even combining classes, which has been a lot of fun to watch and participate in. Like Don and Mike had mentioned, our office hours, they're at the end of the day. That gives our students and families an opportunity to ask teacher-specific questions. That's been a big help this time around. Some of the other things that we did differently this year, starting the school year, all our teachers at Hall Prairie set up Schoology in the same format. So it didn't matter if you were a science teacher or a math teacher or 5th and 6th grade. Everything from the parent and the student's perspective was set up the same way. So we've gotten a lot of great feedback on that. Our art teachers, STEM teachers, they created packets for when we went full remote that we could give to the kids so that they could continue doing some of those projects at home. For example, our kids had art folders. Our idea teachers created little packets where the kids can make their catapults at home. So we've gotten some good feedback on that. The second handout I gave you is something that all the principals worked on with Brent. It was basically a document where we talked about making sure kids have access to everything in Schoology. So at our building in particular, any videos that the teachers make is placed in Schoology, so the kids have access to that both during class and outside of the class. And then our teachers also have the ability to record those classes if it's something that the kids would need later on. And then the last two documents, our teachers created a distance learning matrix that was very similar to the high schools for online instruction, and the last is the letter that we sent out when we went to this model, and you'll see that it's right in line with the junior high and high school. So overall, our attendance rate during the Zoom meetings have been around 95%, give or take. Our attendance is set up a little bit different because of our age group. Our kids have until midnight to complete the assignment or the task given that day. And we did that intentionally because some of our kids really depend heavily on adult guidance during the day. So if Johnny has two parents that are working first shift, he can still get help, when they get home and still get the assignment. So that was intentional, and based on our age group. So thank you.
If I'm not wrong, I think the junior high has till midnight too to turn in assignments. Yeah.
The coordination between the junior high school, and HPI is amazing as I look at what you have here. It's well-tuned, and I'm sure that the 5th grade going to 7th and the 8th grade going to 9th grade is getting what they need to move forward with their education. Mr. Hostler, I'd like to make a proposal to the board. Hearing what I'm hearing is, it sounds like that what you've come up with the Zoom has certainly been a lot of positive feedback with the synchronous learning. What if we said, as you mentioned here, January 5 through 8 is all remote, knowing that synchronous learning for the HPI and junior high school and high school is what we're referring to. January 12th through 19th, we continue remote for HPI, junior high school and high school, with the January 12th date being 4 days a week, K through 4, and then pre-K or preschool hybrid.
Wait, is that what you wanted to say?
The
No, I think-
preschool hybrid. That's what he's proposing.
Hybrid?
Well, he's got preschool 2 days in person, alternating hybrid schedule. So what he has listed on the,
Oh,
So, okay, just want to make sure I understand. So you're proposing 5th through 8th, all remote, all grades.
Just say it one more time.
Okay,
'cause I
I'm
don't think we were
proposing
prepared.
basically, as we've discussed here, after what I've heard with the Zoom synchronous learning, is HPI, junior high school and high school, from the 12th to the 15th will remain remote learning. Everything else stays the same. Again, looking at the same rationale, Kelly, you mentioned, and Gretchen, is let's give it one more week. If it's working positively amongst the students, the educators, administration, the parents, let's give them one more week to see things shake down a little bit with the COVID spread. And then get them back starting the 19th. I'm talking HPI, junior high, and high school. Getting them back to the hybrid starting the 19th.
So now when they go, I guess it's like learning a whole new language. When they come back and they do the hybrid, on the days that they're remote, do we then go back to the say the word for me, Brent, asynchronous learning?
Asynchronous.
Asynchronous.
The days that they're not meeting face-to-face, they would have assignments to be done, but they would not be meeting with the teacher during those days.
Because the
So
teacher,
if you go to school Tuesday, Thursday, your Wednesday and Friday, you have work to be done before the next class meets, but you're not meeting with them during that time.
because the teacher's teaching the other half of the students on that day. So that's
But
why.
the kids and everybody seem to be liking this Zoom thing better. Right?
But we heard the getting back in school, they like that even more, to see their friends and teachers see the kids and vice versa.
Okay, can I second your proposal?
Well,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
just proposing that.
Oh.
We can have discussion, we can
I love it.
present it, somebody can present it as a motion. I'm just thinking that,
Oh, sorry.
from what I heard from the principals with respect to the advantages of what we're currently doing,
Correct.
and knowing the COVID response right now is still high, let's just give it one more week for the older children to settle down with respect to the COVID, and we get them back on the 19th, get them in school, we get some consistency for parents, and they know the schedule.
I guess my confusion, though, is, I mean, we've gotten numerous, shall we say, emails about the disdain of how how PVA was working or how the asynchronous learning was going, and we're finding that the Zoom learning is going well.
Well, and I'd congratulate Dr. Short, Mr. Christie, Mr. Best on putting together, this remote environment. I've seen it work very well
Yes.
in my house too. So congrats on that. That is better. I also
But
caution
are we
just as
throwing
a,
it away if we
but-
go to the hybrid?
No.
as somebody that spends his life pretty much on Zoom, this is the only chance I get to interact with people. Yeah, we're probably not as, at some point, we're not as good at Zoom as we think we are too. I mean, we don't appreciate what we do start losing by being on Zoom all the time. So, that's what, and when I look at the calendar as it's rolling out here, our believe HPI, junior high, through December, they all have now been out for 6 weeks, so they will not have been around other students for 6 weeks. January 5th is a 7th week. Now we're proposing an 8th week. Where does that break? Is it 7? Is it 8? I don't know, but it concerns me. So I get oriented towards wanting our kids back in as quick as we can. But I probably also, I see the sense in giving it another week after that, that quote break, because I think people, I know we're 2 weeks out from Christmas, but families will go skiing. Families are going to go do stuff as well that they, they're right, their choice to go do. So it does seem prudent to give it a little bit more time to clear the case count and the infection rates. I don't know that I have a proposal. This is just more of a stream of consciousness, but that's all what's going through my head right now. That's all what's going through my head. And I hear you, Sue. It's great that Zoom is working out.
Yeah, you guys
I won't
have
be
done
quite convinced
so
it's better
much
than
work
hybrid,
on
though.
this. I mean, how do you? I mean, I want to defer to you. What do you guys want to do? Do you want?
Oh my God.
Do you want to, this all of this then, which seems to be working really well, gets pushed off to the side as we go back on the 19th to the hybrid format that people don't seem to be as happy with? That's where this is where I'm kind of confused. I see all this work to improve the system and then circular file it come the 19th. Is that what you want to do? I mean, I feel like I'm missing a piece of the puzzle or the connector there. Fight!
When we were in the hybrid schedule, we were in a pretty good routine with what we were doing. The kids were in a good routine. And then what started to happen was so many kids were being quarantined that really impacted that greatly. This has been the next best thing to that with what we've been doing. When we went to the 4 days in, by the end of that week, we probably would have had over 300 kids quarantined that day. Really, nobody was getting instruction at that point. I think a lot of it is dependent on where are we with the numbers coming back from break, and where you see things heading right now, what is the best scenario for that? And we feel really good about right now with what we're doing with the remote schedule. Our teachers will tell you they still prefer to see kids face to face. That's really what is what they prefer.
Even if it's hybrid?
Even if it's hybrid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's part of the puzzle I was missing.
It is, but I think right now they are really liking what they're doing with the remote schedule, knowing that if we come back again and we go a step backwards, that the constant switching from model to model isn't beneficial as well. And so I think that what we're doing now is good. And coming back, whether it's a week or 2 weeks, I think we have to see where that would be with where things are trending. And having kids that are in college, and I'm seeing all these college kids interacting right now. And I told my son he could just stay at his house over on campus rather than being in our house, because he has all of his friends all want to come over there now. We've gotten used to not having them around and having that exposure. So I'm just worried where that would head at that point. And because I know there's a lot of homes that are in those same situations as well, with kids and family members and gatherings that are going to happen over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so then your opinion of this, Don, staying remote until the 15th for your age group and then coming back hybrid on the 19th would be what you're hearing the family, students, and teachers are willing to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think Don hit it on the head where we can't be ping-ponging back and forth. That's critical. One of the things that my teachers mentioned is they'd like to be able to start the day earlier. I said, we're not going to make one more change. There's change fatigue, and we're not going to go down that road. We wanted to do today as a regular virtual day and then not do the Friday, would compress them so we'd have 2 days of each. That's too much change. We decided not to go down that road. We have to be consistent. I think adding a second week is probably not a bad idea. It is new, it's a novel environment, and it's working pretty well, better than we expected. So there's some of that, wow, this isn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. So there's some of that at work too. You run a risk, right?
Right.
When you've got the kids on screen, you make a contact and you can touch them and you see them. You don't know what happens next day. You don't know what happens after that. In a hybrid fashion, we can see a kid, we can make a connection, We don't know what happens the next day. There's still some question marks. But this is not bad, and it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. So I think that's a benefit to us at this stage of the game. But we've got to be consistent. I'm one who's going to be very conservative about how to release kids and how we expose and all those quarantine things. Doing it this way, we're able to get kids involved who would otherwise be quarantined, teachers teaching who otherwise would have had to be quarantined. It's not bad. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it's not bad.
It's still a night and day difference between where we were in the spring.
Oh.
Okay. Well, that's a good step right in the right direction.
But the one thing I will say to that, and I agree with Don completely on that regard, we had time for it. In the spring, we had no time to prepare. We didn't know what we were dealing with. We were rolling out Wi-Fi hotspots. We were rolling out machines to younger kids. We were tearing our hair out trying to figure out which way was up. We had time to prepare for this. We knew what was potentially coming. We had worked with Zoom to a certain extent. Teachers got a little bit more practice with it. They'd still like to know more, but they're doing pretty well with it. And to your point, Eric, they probably don't know what they don't know, right? But there's a lot of good things that are coming from it. But it's light years from where we were last time. But we had time to do it. And that time to plan for those things is critical.
So then this, the remote with the Zoom that you're doing now is a plan B, that if we should have another uptick like what we had after Thanksgiving, then you guys would be comfortable and then returning to this for as long as necessary. Is that what I'm hearing then? Okay.
And I want to note that he agreed with me twice. You just said what I told you to say.
It's recorded, yep, there you go.
So, at Hall Prairie, with the age of our kids, we are that bridge between the elementary and the secondary schools. I'm very concerned with our kids at my level if we go that extra week, because that's 8 weeks that our kids have been in remote, plus the 3 weeks or 2 weeks of Christmas vacation. I think you can look at starting Hall Prairie, what's that second week?
On the
The
5th?
12th through the 15th.
The 12th, where it makes sense for the junior high and high school to maybe start that later week like they were talking about.
Okay.
I think for us, and just to reiterate what Mike was saying, that consistency piece for us is huge at our level. I can tell you that what we're doing now is 20 times better what we did in the spring, but those at-risk kids, we're still struggling to meet their needs in this environment. Looking at the split hybrid for Hall Prairie, obviously, like Tom was saying, we want our kids at school. We ran out of adults, is essentially what it came down to. This allows us to provide some stability for our families, give them an opportunity to plan ahead, and gives us, that face-to-face time with our kids. It's not ideal, but it's a great stepping stone to get back to those 4 days in our building.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was quickly taking notes here. So January 5th through the 8th, everybody, preschool through 12 is on hybrid. The week of the
No.
12th
No.
through...
No.
hybrid.
Not full remote.
Full
I'm
remote.
sorry. Here I am, I can't even read my own notes. The 5th through the 8th, full remote for preschool through 12. The week of the 12th through the 15th, HPI would be added to the hybrid list of preschool through 4. But the high school and junior high would still be on remote. And then the week of the 19th, everybody would be in preschool through 4. Check me if I'm right here, Scott. Preschool through 4 would be the 4 days. HPI, junior high, high school, starting the 19th, all 3 of you would be on hybrid. So that would get HPI to hybrid, which was a large part of one of our letters at the beginning of all of this was, why isn't HPI on hybrid? Well, early on in all of this, we didn't need HPI on hybrid until, what was it, week 13 or 14, and the holes in Tom's proverbial bucket just totally opened up. So do I have the suggestion correct then, now?
Well, it's different than what Ray proposed, but that is,
Yeah,
it
it's
is an
different.
option.
It's an amendment to what Ray proposed, but, I mean, we don't have a formal motion on the floor
Right.
yet.
Well, we're
but-
not going to make a motion, I didn't think. I
No,
thought
I
were
think we
gonna-
do need to make a motion. Isn't this the night that we're trying to get this decided?
Yeah, I think we need a motion.
Yeah,
That's what
we
we
need a
did
motion
before
so
the
that
other
we
meeting.
plan.
We've supported change each meeting, so I think we should support one way or the other here. So let's make a motion. If someone has a motion for this, what Mr. Hostler suggested here, or amend it through discussion, any motion for what I,
Poor Tom's probably trying to take notes. I'd like
Okay.
to make a motion for what I
Okay,
just
I would
babbled
like-
out.
Oh, are you making the motion?
Yeah, I'm making the
Okay.
motion. So January, I'll try and say it correctly this time. January 5th through 8th, full remote, preschool through 12. January 12th through 5th, preschool through 4th grade, go back 4 days. HPI comes back hybrid. The junior high and high school stay full remote. The week starting January 19th, the junior high and the high school, as well as HPI, are on hybrid. Preschool through 4th are 4 days. Did I spit that out right?
Yep.
Okay.
Except for you have to change preschool to 2-day.
Preschool's hybrid's always been 2 days.
Yeah.
They've always been that way since, so they would just.
Oh,
stay
okay.
with their normal.
Yeah.
So
My bad.
I don't
Yeah.
want the parents to think suddenly their children are going 4
no,
days.
it's good,
Okay,
good discussion.
preschool is the hybrid, within the
2
2
days.
days. Okay, my bad. So I'd like to, with that correction made, I would like to make that as a motion.
We have a first.
second.
Is there a second, Mrs.
A
Downs?
second.
And I'll have Mr. Hostler read it back once he's got it all written down.
Good luck.
Well, so we have a motion that from January 5th to the 8th, all students in grades pre-K through 12 will be full remote. Beginning on the week of January 12th through the 15th, pre-K through 4 will be going to the hybrid, which includes 4 days a week of face-to-face. HPI will be returning, will return to a hybrid that includes 2 days face-to-face. And the junior high and high school will remain in full remote with the asynchronous model. On June 19th, beginning on June 19th.
January.
I'm sorry.
We're waiting for June.
On January 19th, no changes to pre-K through 6, but the junior high and high school will now return to the 2-day-a-week hybrid.
And we have a first and a second, that was the motion. Any other discussion?
I appreciate the additional comments from the principals, you know. That is a
Yes,
plan that
thanks
kind of
for
gets
your
us to
time.
the less disruption, most consistency, I think.
I wanted to personally congratulate all 3 of you. I think you've done an amazing, amazing job, and I think your presentations here tonight have reassured the board, and I'm sure that there are parents at home saying, this is good. So congratulations, it was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a first and a second. A roll call, please, Mr. Hostler.
Roll call, please.
Wait a minute.
Mrs. Eubank.
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Ms. Larimer.
Yes.
Mrs. Downs.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you very much. At this time, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess and we'll be back. Thank you. sigh.
Spoken as my true treasure.
Love you, buddy.
Okay, welcome back. Thank you for that recess, and now we'll resume with item number 7, the Treasurer's Report, and we have with us one of our Finance Committee members, Vice President Eric Bennington.
I think they heard me whisper, don't say that, Ray. Don't say that. Yeah, just because
My
I'm.
eyes are rolling.
So I'm gonna walk you through the November monthly financial report here. Just because I'm sitting in Pam Harrington's usual spot doesn't mean that I have her total divine wisdom on this, so be kind. So Tom, we'll go ahead and go to the, can we pull up the other presentation?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, thanks.
This one?
Yep, there we go. It's in my nature to stay away from these PowerPoints, so I'll just walk you through the cold,
the
hard
numbers.
financials.
That's right.
Let's see.
Sorry for the audible, Tom.
That's okay.
So go ahead and go down to the first item here, and this is all up on your board materials, is the cash reconciliation. And see the total accounting fund balance is about $20.9 million and how it reconciles down. They did a nice job tying this cash reconciliation out. I'll remind you the $20.9 million is not total operating funds, it's total cash on hand, which consists of several other cash balances, fund balances. Move on to the next slide. So this is the month of November. I'm going to focus on the year-to-date results, which is that black highlighted column there. So overall, on the revenue side, those are up $3 million, or 11.5% as compared to this time last year. That's driven, and there's really no new information here, but I'll tell the story briefly. Real estate taxes up 27% due to collections from the most recent operating levy as compared to the prior year. School district income tax is down 6%, lower than last year, but that 6% drop is also lower than what we as a board had approved in the budget. So a little bit of, yeah, it's down, but it's not down by as much as we had thought. So there is some good news in there. Obviously, several pandemic-related reductions being seen in the revenues lines, such as tuition, all-day kindergarten, public school funding from the state, as well as casino revenue, the contributions from casino revenue being down. Moving to the expense side, no real stories, new stories here. Expenses are up 4.5%, being driven, again, when more than 80% of your expenses are salaries and benefits, those are driving that increase. Individually, salaries are up 2%, more due to the contractual terms of the new CBAs, and offset with some cost reductions that were done earlier in the year due to the pandemic. Benefits are up about 6%. Those are primarily, we've seen, and I believe we talked about it at the last board meeting, healthcare costs are kind of coming in for the year lower than expected, being driven primarily by people not having procedures done, and then also just kind of the cyclicality of medical costs. Not too many shock claims, big dollar claims out there this year. Probably not setting a trend yet. We'll see how those costs track as we move into 2021, as people start to return to doctors and such. So the capital outlay, again, as a reminder, is due to the bus leasing program, which is why you see some numbers this year, not necessarily last year. Supply costs are up, needed to support student safety in the midst of this pandemic. Tom, the next page, please. So, and you have to turn, I wasn't going to spend much time on this. This is for your informational purposes. This is a breakdown by week or by month of the salaries and benefits. And then the final slide that we'll go over. So this is the cash slide. As you can see, the 2020 cash, which is that blue line, is about $2 million through all periods above the 2019 cash balance. So you're looking at higher cash year over year. You're seeing it trending down. The blue line trending down, 2020 cash trending down, as it did in the prior year. So you see that cyclicality. Nobody's worried that blue line will go below zero, obviously. And then it starts to tick itself back up in the first part of 2021. It should tick itself back up in the first part of 2021 as we start collecting on, I believe, February real estate taxes. Again, nothing in there will be negative at this point. And then also one thing that is missing from the presentation, so I appreciated the treasurer staff getting it for me today. Encumbrances didn't make it on this report. They are $3.9 million as of the end of November.
Wow.
So that is, you now know what I know. And I'll turn it over to Ray
Any
to
questions
take a
for
motion.
Ray? Okay, we need a motion to accept the November financials, the monthly financials.
So moved.
Second?
Any questions, discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Hostler.
Yes, Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington,
Yes.
Mr. Pullman,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer, sorry,
Yes.
Mrs. Downs.
Yes.
I had to backtrack because I knew you did the second, so I was trying to capture that, so
That's all
sorry.
right. You're trying to do a lot of jobs over there.
Okay, let's go on with our committee reports, and we'll start with the Communications Committee. Mrs. Eubank and Mrs. Larimer.
Oh my gosh, I left my notebook at home. Okay, get me started. I didn't take many notes.
No, it wasn't much. I mean, it was just communicating about school, the school schedule, hybrid.
We talked a lot about Tom's working with the faculty and getting that video out so that everybody was all on the same page. Basically, the communication about getting COVID out to everybody. So that was we were kind of COVID focused on this particular meeting. And that's pretty much where it went.
Yeah.
So if you read Tom's email and were able to see the video, which for some reason I can't do on my computer, then you got a large gist of what we talked about in the communications meeting.
Okay? All right. Let's go with the Personnel Committee, Mr. Bennington.
Pulling up those notes right now. So the minutes are in the board materials. Hang on just a second. Yeah, so Personnel Committee kind of started talking about the timing of Dr. Short's, replacement and recruitment for that position. We went over a new staffing request form, just how the principals of the buildings as well as student services kind of makes requests for new teaching positions. And then an update on where they're at in some hiring for some other teaching positions. So another item that you'll see a little bit later is Kelly Johnson did a nice job walking through the selection for a new benefits consultant. And that it was a good process, and you're going to see a approval for a new contract on the agenda a little bit later today. That's right.
Have we done that before?
I forget how long it had been. It's probably been.
So we've had a consultant, and we'll talk more about it. But I mean, we can kind of discuss it now if you want to ahead of the other.
Okay.
So the school district has a benefits consultant that we hired, and I'm not sure. Don't quote me on this, but it was maybe 10 to 12 years ago.
Oh.
So at that time, Perrysburg Schools was part of a consortium. So we were part of a large group that all had the same benefits, and however the group went, so did Perrysburg Schools. So unfortunately, we felt that our needs weren't being met in that situation. We were the largest school, and there were some other issues that we had concerns. So at that point in time, we began to when you're in that situation, you need somebody who understands the market, who can look at it kind of strategically, what kind of a plan is similar to the one that you have. And so we put out an RFP and interviewed some folks, and we ended up hiring somebody to help us as a consultant and to lead us from that consortium to become self-insured.
Okay.
And so their role then is they know the local marketplace. They were able to make some recommendations. Our benefits are something that are negotiated, so we don't have the ability just to go in and say these are the benefits that we're going to offer. It has to be bargained. This person explains to the different bargaining groups what the benefits are. They'll put together recommendations for what the premiums should be, the increases. They also provide suggestions about where we might want to go with our bargaining to try to reduce costs, or you're spending this much here. You might want to consider bidding this out or bidding that out. There's something that we've talked about recently with stop loss for those that are outside insurance. We have insurance that when a claim reaches a certain dollar amount, because we're self-insured, that the stop loss insurance will kick in. So if you have a claim that is $120,000, a huge claim, after a certain point, the stop loss insurance will kick in. And so they make recommendations as to what to set that dollar amount, where to go out and find that. So they gather a lot of data. They present reports every month to the administration and say, okay, here's what you're spending on prescription drugs. Here's what you're doing with this. I think you should tweak this. I think you should tweak that. So they're really an advisor in terms of trying to keep our costs down. So we'd been with the same advisor going back, and that advisor served us, we felt, pretty well. As you know, the performance audit report came out, identified healthcare as one of those areas that we needed to take a little more of a look at, and it's a big expenditure in the district. So one of the things we thought is, do we want to look at the person that's giving us advice, kind of giving us that strategic view of where we need to go as a district in the future? Is it time to open that up and see what other voices are out there? And we went through that process and ended up with Savage and Associates. They are big players in healthcare, in advising here in Northwest Ohio. They represent several school districts, so they're known. The structure of their fees will align with what we're paying today, and structured in a way where as we start to see savings, they will start to see more benefit in terms of their pay. So it's kind of an interesting concept, but so for us, we're starting with what we're already committed to. But more importantly, I think it allows us to have that extra vision in terms of what else is out there, what else can we do to keep those costs down. So.
Because that was my question, in hiring a consultant for X amount of dollars, are we saving X plus whatever to warrant having the consultant? And you're saying that is the situation then?
Right.
Okay.
Again, this is a changing consultants at the same price.
Okay.
Yes.
How does it circle back then to the healthcare, was it called Perrysburg? What's the place we use?
Yeah, the near site clinic.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to answer that question. They're disaggregated a little bit. I mean, they could come in and through some knowledge they have and make suggestions as to how to improve that, for example. So, they don't have a horse in that race either way, other than to say, here's what is going to work best for the district to save money.
Okay. So they could look at that and
if I'm not
evaluate
mistaken,
it's
I
not
think
working.
Savage works with the city. I think they are their health
that's a good
consultants.
point. Yeah.
So they're one of the 3 partners there, so
Right.
they're familiar with it. So.
Oh, good.
So there's good alignment there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yep. Good point.
All right, policy committee didn't have a meeting about pupil services.
No meeting in December.
Okay. And operations?
Nothing to add, but Everything's in the notes there. It was a real quick one. I think it was all.
That's because I wasn't
It was all
there.
but like, right, exactly. It was all but 8, 10 minutes.
I got called into work, so I wasn't able to go at the last
Did
minute.
they have, did they talk about, I see in the minutes, the location for the portables at the high school?
Oh, I was going to add that. That's the only thing I didn't see that was on there was the portables. It was more discussed the month before. They're working with the city, and that is all that is the location. Yeah, it was on the month before. It is okay. I think everyone always thinks Roachton's the front of the high school, but it's really not. It's is that Fort Meigs? I don't want to get that
Yeah.
name of the road wrong.
Yes.
Okay, so Fort Meigs, so that's the front. So the Roachton side where you drop people off, it's going to be right there, right, Tom? Like right next to, you know, where you drop the kids off, and it's in between the parking lot, and it's so.
Where they had already drawn
It's
it.
that big open area, yeah, right to the right
So
there.
where the bricks were laid for donations, that area?
I don't know where that is. I
No,
can't.
We have a meeting set up with the city where we'll talk about this because the city has input as to where you can put these things. There's also some other factors to consider. For example, you don't want to install portables where you're going to be adding on to the building, so that knocks off a pretty large section where you can. The other thing is there's some rules that they talked about
Yeah.
that you have to be within so many feet of a bathroom, otherwise you have to have a bathroom in the portable. So there's some code things. And then the next thing you need to look at is where is there wiring, where is there the kind of utilities that you can run to the portables, and then they have to be by an exit. And then you get to, you don't want to put it in the middle of a parking lot or cut off access behind the building or around the building, because then rescue vehicles can't easily get to those locations. So all of a sudden it starts to get pretty narrow.
Yeah.
So when you have the student drop off, when you're coming off of Roachton, as Ms. Eubank described, when you get to that corner of the building, there's a door there before you get to the main drop off, you know. Right there would be one of the logical parts of that. So there's no great place to put it, but that would put us near an exit, which is important. It would put us out of where, in the future, if we expand the high school as it's designed to be expanded, we're not going to have to move portables again because that's where they're going to have to do the construction. And it's not in the back driveway where, you know, you can't get around it kind of a thing, so.
And close to bathrooms. That was
Yeah.
a key.
Yeah, that was one of my
Issue.
questions, was why the north end and not the south end?
So the south end in terms of, this is,
Because there's blacktop there. So
yeah, so
on the
the
other
south end, you
side,
have the auxiliary gym,
and then there's blacktop.
and then you have that drive behind it.
It's a driveway.
So the first issue is you're putting the classrooms on really a non-instructional side of the building. So getting into, you know, getting kids there and back, that would be one concern. This puts them near the other classroom, so there's less time. The other thing too is the portables are a pretty big footprint. So you're either going to have to put them on the other side of the road or tuck them in along that pretty narrow grassy strip. And I don't think that's really, you know.
I just wasn't excited about the bathroom situation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as a teacher, it would have set me into a panic if I had to walk outside and race down the sidewalk and in down the hallway to get to a bathroom in, 5 minutes? Yeah, no, that's not happening.
So
But it
is-
would be hard for the students too.
Yeah, so the other conversation that will come up is, you know, what type of portable, because there's different ones. Even in our own district, we have portables that there aren't bathroom facilities, there's a door, and you walk right into a classroom. And then you think about the Woodland portable, which is, you know, a pod of classrooms with teacher restrooms and student restrooms. So there's a lot of options out there that you know, there's pros and cons to each of those. So I think that's probably the next phase of the conversation is, what type makes the most sense there. And then, there's options just like a vehicle. Do you buy it? Do you lease it? Do we repurpose some that we have in the district?
Yeah.
All those things are part of that next conversation.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hostler. How about Mr. Downs? Anything on the curriculum you'd like to bring up?
I think the key thing that it's all, the minutes are there for you, but I think the key thing is we're talking about the transition to go from 2-day to 4-day and all those, and what we aren't really aware of is the tremendous amount of work that has to go in to get those children who are in the Perrysburg Virtual Academy back into Perrysburg schools for at the end of the semester. That will take a lot of paperwork, a lot of time, a lot of scheduling, and that's just one more complicating factor in all that we've been talking about today. And so I think that that's something we need to be aware of.
Do we have a date, a drop dead deadline for a PVA switch, either to or from?
Yesterday.
Yeah, so we've had the deadline for those that are going back into the classroom from the PVA transitioning back. We never had that on-ramp open for kids to leave the current setting to go into PVA.
Oh.
So that was never available. I know, with the size staff that we have right now that is making the PVA work as well as it is, to meet those students' needs, and then to help them transition off. I mean, that's pretty much everything. To then create this on-ramp, we would need additional staff to be able to accommodate those families, onboard them, get them set up. And it's even a little more challenging mid-year because you're taking classes that have started and then you have to have somebody physically kind of link them into which online course, at what point, what unit do we drop them in. It's very intensive. And so that was one of the reasons why, the on-ramp wasn't fully open. So
I don't think I ever realized that. I thought it was.
But I thought we were not allowing students to transfer into the PVA at this point.
that's what I meant by the on-ramp.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, you said
yeah.
it isn't fully open. That implied to me that you
Oh,
thought we
yeah.
were going to open it.
No,
We're not.
no.
We're not.
It's
Okay.
yeah. For the students that are in there now, they're in there. They're going to continue on. It's open. That's what I meant. So,
Okay,
but we're not
all right.
the on-ramp for putting more students in.
Is
we
not
never
open.
open that.
Okay.
Thank you, thank
That's
you.
So
You
interesting.
scared me there.
Yeah.
Is it for
yeah.
the year or semester? Because you keep on saying semester. I'm
Right, because at the end of the semester, they were able to make the decision if they were going to, I thought it was either way, but they could decide if they wanted to leave PVA and come back to the classroom. It's not classroom people going to PVA, which I did not understand, so I get it. So when do they have to decide if they're going to leave PVA?
So that deadline has happened. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
So,
a day late and a dollar short,
So-
Sue.
Wait, so it's a year, right? It's not a semester. They're signed up for a year, the school year.
So PVA is available for a year, but we gave families the option to jump back into school at the semester.
Okay, so, okay.
So we have students that are transferring from PVA back
Okay.
into regular,
In-person,
traditional.
traditional.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
Do we
Yeah.
know yet how many are leaving PVA?
Last count, there were about 130.
Oh, ooh.
Yeah.
Okay,
Leaving
so
and
now
coming back in?
Courtney's just had a coronary to redo all the bus routes, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, my goodness, that's a lot.
Yeah, and that's why the on-ramp, because transitioning all those students on the off-ramp is
Yeah.
tremendous, while we're keeping the kids that are going on the highway, supporting them, so, with our existing staff, so.
Okay.
Anything else, Mrs. Downs?
The rest is pretty Oh, there are these seals you get for your graduation diploma, and the state requires you to have X number of seals, and of the 8 seals, 6 of them are, the qualifications are state mandated. For 2 of them, there are local mandates, and that's what we've been working on well, we haven't. That's what curriculum has been working on with the other school districts and trying to come up with what our standards will be. We don't want them to be so lax that people say, oh, look what Perrysburg did. We don't want to make them so hard that kids don't get to graduate. So, and these don't, does it start in 2 years?
23, yeah.
23, yeah.
It's the graduating class of 2023.
Yeah.
It's actually, there's the requirements in terms of credits. There's competency, which we've always had in terms of performance on state tests. And then the seals, it's actually, there are 12. You need to earn 2. That's where you get mixed up. You need to earn 2. There's actually 12. 9 requirements are dictated by ODE. 3 are locally defined. And so you'll see the 3 that are locally defined on the first.
We're approving those
And
tonight.
I'll call your attention to item 14.4. We're going to be approving those tonight in the consent agenda. It's the community service seal, the fine and performing arts seal, and the student engagement seal. And as Mrs. Downs has mentioned, they're defined by our local district here. As Mr. Schwartzmiller said, 9 the state's already spoken for, 3 we've designed for the students. So you can look at that and we can discuss that when we
If
get
I
to
have a
it.
question about the seal, do I bring that up now or do I wait until we get to that point?
Well, I think now is a good time. We're
Okay,
discussing
because on
the-
this service one, it seemed really extensive to me, and very, like, instead of being able to do a lot, and maybe I didn't read it correctly, Brent, I don't know, but do they have to do a service project for basically one service organization to be consistent within that organization? It's just not hours gathered all over the place, they have to serve one organization?
Yeah, it is pretty broad, and I think it's broad because we want students to be creative. They have to work towards a common project, that is correct.
Okay. The reason why I asked this was because, one, it was different when I was in school, which was, 1,000 years ago. But PSF is doing that one project, and I thought, well, instead of them doing it, why not have, like, the seniors or whoever's working on that service seal do it, but it didn't sound like that would be something that would count towards those kind of hours or those credits, right?
Right. Now understand that to graduate, you need to earn 2. There's 12 total, so you choose 2 from that 12.
Oh.
And
okay.
so, we don't know. I mean, everybody's entering this initially not knowing how it's going to turn out because it's never been implemented before. But as I was sharing with Gretchen and Greg, if you look at our science and social studies fields, for example, typically we have between 85 and 90% of students pass those 2 tests proficient or better that would earn those 2 seals right off the bat if the trend continued.
Okay.
So we don't know the population of students that will even go towards earning a community seal, service seal. We do know that we'll have students that will want all the bling and earn as many as possible to build their resume. But we also could have students that say, I already have my 2, I'm good, I'm not going to go in that direction. This is just one option out of 12.
Okay.
And so it needs to be a little bit more than just a day or 2. It needs to be a concerted effort working towards something and then
Gotcha.
learning something from the experience.
Almost like earning an Eagle badge, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So what?
And what Gretchen was alluding to with neighboring districts, there is some fear and trepidation as we enter this of being a district that has requirements here and your neighborhood has requirements here. And then, we do have these things about social media platforms that may point that out to us. And so a lot of conversation from district to district is, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to see a lot of common requirements because we all sort of
you.
Okay, how about pupil services?
No, we didn't
Oh,
have a
already get all
meeting.
through that? We done
Yeah.
with committees then.
We still didn't have a meeting in December.
Okay, very good. All right,
And
it takes-
Perrysburg Schools Foundation, we didn't meet this month.
You have a report on that?
No, we didn't have a meeting
Okay.
the month of December, so.
Okay.
It's not on there, but I just saying,
Okay.
I'm stating why.
All right, okay.
Were you mentioning, I'm sorry, what did you say, Kelly?
Perrysburg Schools Foundation, the month of December, we did not have a meeting. And it's not on there, but I'm just
I
stating why.
would like to encourage, if you have not made a donation, to make it, doesn't have to be $1 million. 50,000 is good. $10 is fine, is what I'm trying to say. But it really helps them in their drives to be able to say, we have 100% participation from the board.
You can
Thank you.
also, Perrysburg School Foundation is one of the things that you can tag onto your Kroger card. So every purchase that you make at Kroger's, a donation to PSF is made, so you can tag it and participate that way. Just a little plug in there for it.
Okay.
Phone lines are now open.
Commercial break over.
That takes us to item number 9 with the consent agenda. If you look through again, we have some tutors and substitutes, amendment to bus drivers, contracts, a couple extended times. And then, of course, 14.1 is what we talked about with this consulting with Savage and Associates. And the graduation requirements with the seals, 14.4. So that takes us from items 10 through 14. We have a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved?
Second?
Any discussion, any questions on the consent agenda?
I think I already discussed it.
Roll call, please, Mr. Hostler?
Yes, Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington,
Yes.
Mr. Pullman,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mrs. Downs.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That takes us to item 15, where we'll get ready to talk about nominating a president pro tem for the organizational meeting in 2021. Do you have any nominations?
I nominate you. I nominate Ray Pullman.
Any
I
other
second.
nominations? Roll call, please, Mr. Hostler?
Okay. Well, we had nominations, and then we closed the nominations,
okay,
and then
yeah, let's close
we,
it.
yeah, so if there's no other nominations,
No, any
then
other nominations?
So we don't vote?
you do. You
Oh, okay.
open the floor for other nominations, so if someone else
Oh,
wanted to
okay.
nominate someone else, and then you have to close nominations, and then you call for the vote. Yeah, sorry.
Any other nominations?
You didn't know that when you sat in that seat, it came with sticky tacks so that you can't get out?
We'll close the nominations, and roll call, please, Mr. Hostler?
Mrs. Eubank?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Bennington?
Yes.
Mr. Pullman?
Yes.
Ms. Larimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Downs?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations on running the organizational meeting.
Thank you, thank you. That shouldn't be too bad. 15.2, appointment of Mr. Bennington, the second term to the Pennant County Career Center Board of Education.
So moved.
Second?
Of course, we didn't ask you
Right.
if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, well,
I'm not
We just-
arguing, and I'm
your
not
seat
arguing
came
with you
with
either,
sticky tack,
so.
too.
yeah.
Okay.
roll call, please, Mr. Hostler.
Sure. Mrs. Eubank?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Bennington?
Yes.
Mr. Pullman?
Yes.
Ms. Larimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Downs?
Yes.
All right, motion
Thank you very much.
Well, it's such a good fit.
Oh,
It really
it's a
is
great,
such a good fit.
it's a very good
You're-
experience.
You're a tremendous asset to that board.
Thank you. Let's move on to any board discussion, any new business, and item number 16.
Do we, I can't read that. Where do we decide when the organizational meeting is going to be?
Later on.
Oh, later on, so sorry.
Oh, no,
Okay.
wait a minute.
Never mind.
That was in, I thought I saw that someplace.
It's
No?
right
Next.
below.
It's right below it, it's right
Right below
next.
It's 16.2.
Yep, there it is, 16.2, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think,
So we're just board discussion, any type of new business.
Oh, okay, so we can discuss it then. Do we have a date up there? As I say, I can't read it.
By law, we have to have a board meeting. Organizational board meeting is where new board members are sworn in, the president of the board officers are elected, the assignments are made, and then the board votes for the meeting schedule for the year, sets all of those kinds of things. That has to be done in the first 15 days.
15. I was thinking
Yeah.
10. I thought maybe.
Yeah,
not.
yeah. So for us, just following the kind of the trend of looking at last year, looking at the year before, we do our work sessions are the first Tuesday of the month. So looking at all those kinds of things, we kind of looked at Monday, January 4th at 5:30.
You know, I think because we have no new board members to swear in, I think that it could be during Tuesday morning work session and not disrupt any schedules.
I would like to keep it at the 5:30 on Monday because I work all day Tuesday.
So you're not going to come to work sessions?
Work sessions are going to be a little bit of a challenge. So I'm going to be able to try and move my work schedule time a little bit, but for this one, we never know. Sometimes it's a super quick meeting and sometimes it isn't. If we go to the 4th, I know I can be here.
But we don't even know the times of the work sessions. I mean, obviously that'll be discussed at the organizational meeting.
So are we planning just the organizational meeting right now, January 4th, and not the work session, January 4th included?
What we could do is we could do, this has happened in the past, so I'm assuming we may have some items that we want to either talk about or to approve. So typically what happens is it's kind of a twofer. It's a double,
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have done that.
So what we could do is have the organizational meeting begin at 5:30, go through that. Usually that's not a very long meeting, and then end the organizational meeting, and then immediately following it start the work session, or if we have some things on the agenda. So we could do both of those back to back.
Would
Yeah,
y'all be
that
okay
works.
with that?
Mrs.
I
Downs,
think
that
we
works
should
for
keep
you?
it
That way
together.
we will not meet the 5th then. Just stay on the 4th.
Well, let's,
Just for that day only right now, just to,
Yeah.
So we've got, I mean, that date, we just, again, pulled it out. That's a professional development day or work day. Staff is back that day, students are back the next day, but we've got time.
And then our board meeting is on the 19th because the 18th is a holiday. Yeah.
Well, we haven't decided the date for the board meeting.
No, but that's normally what we do. The January meeting and the February meeting are usually the Tuesday afterwards.
Usually,
The
correct.
holiday. So that's where,
Assuming if we keep the same schedule.
you think,
Yeah.
Mrs. Downs, you okay with the 4th?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I just had to make sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do 2 meetings on the 4th. We'll do
Okay,
our work
thank
session
you.
in addition to the organizational meeting. Do we have to vote for that? Are we good for consensus?
So this is where I miss Mrs. Harrington's expertise. So
Well,
why don't we do a
When in
vote just
doubt,
to make
vote.
sure it
Do we have
doesn't
a
cost
motion?
us anything?
Need a motion to accept January 4th for a organizational meeting, followed by a work session meeting.
So move.
Second.
Eric?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
All right. Mrs. Eubank?
Yes.
Mr. Bennington?
Yes.
Mr. Pullman?
Yes.
Ms. Larimer, you didn't second that. So Ms. Larimer?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Downs?
Yes, I think he forgets your name.
That's what I think he's still thinking Mr.
Just say,
Larimer.
hey, you, that works.
No, no.
I did hear Eric sigh over there, though.
Oh, there you go. All right.
That takes us to the end of our meeting. I do not see anybody here for public participation. So at this time, I wish you all happy holidays, and at this point, we'll adjourn the meeting. Roll call,
Amen.
please, Mr. Hostler.
Mrs. Eubank.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Bennington.
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Ms. Larimer.
Yes. I was
Mrs.
wondering
Downs.
who's going to get him first.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.